cultivation world, I begin by getting struck by lightning. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 251 Aoki Yufang Shuttle. In the next few days, Su Fan has been sorting out all kinds of spoils in the cave. This time in the secret mine, he sees dozens of storage bags of various sizes. Although there was nothing valuable, the quantity was extremely considerable. Moreover, the various things were extremely messy, from spiritual rice and spiritual noodles, to talismans and magic tools, to various spiritual materials and spiritual herbs, which were simply varied. Nowadays, all kinds of materials in the city are rising wildly. If these materials are handled well, it is no problem to make a profit of several times the price difference. This time, the Luotian sect attacked, and Haoan sect suffered heavy losses. The market, spiritual fields and spiritual mines in various places were almost looted. If all the cultivators near Haoan Immortal City are added together, there will be a shortage of spiritual rice alone. There are also various kinds of elixirs to ensure cultivation, which will definitely not be able to keep up. Moreover, this time when the evil cult attacked, all the market and small and medium-sized families within the influence of Haoan sect will buy cultivation materials in large quantities. Combat equipment such as various talismans and magic tools will also rise to the sky, and even be out of stock. Su Fan originally looked down on these materials seized from the evil cultivators, but who would have thought that this pile of junk would now become a hot commodity? It took Su Fan 3 full days to sort out all the spoils of war into categories. The next step is to keep an eye on the prices of various materials in the city. At least in the next 1 or 2 months, they will definitely rise to the sky. After sorting out this batch of materials, Su Fan went to Haoan Immortal City again. As he thought, all kinds of materials were rising wildly, even talisman paper had increased several times, and there was even a shortage of stock. Su Fan knew that the current situation must be driven by merchants in the city, hoarding and driving up prices. But for Su Fan, of course, he hoped that this situation would last as long as possible. The next morning, Su Fan was practicing martial arts and found that the formation outside was triggered by someone. He walked over and opened the formation, and was stunned. He saw Lee Myakusu standing outside, smiling at him. "Why are you here? Come in." Su Fan led Lee Myakusu to the pond of the cave, and then brewed a pot of spiritual tea for her. Lee Myakusu sat on a chair by the pond, curiously looking at the scenery in the cave. "Your place is nice, but a little small." Su Fan picked up the teapot and poured her a cup of spiritual tea. "I'm alone, and the cave is not small." Lee Myakusu pointed to the sauna room by the pond and the water pipes next to it. "What are these things used for?" Su Fan explained to her and led her around the pond. Lee Myakusu was very curious about everything here and kept asking questions. Su Fan was not bored, and patiently explained to her the various uses of these things. "Your place is really interesting. I have never seen these things before." Su Fan just smiled and said nothing. The caves of ordinary cultivators are relatively simple, and rarely have fancy ones like his. Lee Myakusu took out a jade talisman from her ring and handed it to Su Fan. "This is the good deed that the sect has rewarded me for. You can take the jade talisman to the Foreign Affairs Hall in the city to exchange for the cultivation resources you need." Su Fan was not polite and took the jade talisman from the other party. But asking him to go to the Foreign Affairs Hall of Haoan sect in the city to exchange for cultivation materials is definitely not possible. The cultivation resources exchanged in the Foreign Affairs Hall of Haoan sect in the city are mainly for a large number of recruiting cultivators. Compared with the cultivation resources exchanged for disciples in the sect, the quality is much worse. He thought for a while and asked, "Senior, are the cultivation resources that can be exchanged in the Foreign Affairs Hall of Haoan Immortal City the same as those in the sect?" Lee Myakusu was stunned for a moment, and she immediately understood what Su Fan meant. "I really don't know, let me ask for you." After she finished speaking, she took out the jade talisman for transmitting messages and went to the side to ask. Su Fan couldn't help but smile bitterly. This senior was like a fairy who didn't care about the trivial things in the mortal world. It doesn't take much thought to know how the standards of these two places could be the same. After a while, Lee Myakusu came over after asking, "Give me the jade talisman. I just asked, and there is nothing good to exchange in the inner and outer affairs hall of the city." I will go back to the sect to help you exchange it tomorrow, then thank you, senior. Why thank me? Thanks for asking. I really don't know the mystery. After Lee Myaoxu said this, Su Fan still believed her. This girl was no different from those college students who didn't graduate in his previous life. Of course, she was a good person. Despite this, Su Fan didn't want to get too close to her. Compared with the female cultivators of the immortal sect, he liked the girls of the demon sect more. Lee Myaoxu thought for a while and asked, by the way, what do you want to exchange? I will try my best to find you a few good ones. Su Fan thought for a while and said, is there a flying magic weapon of better quality? I have only one requirement, that is, the faster the better. As for other things, I want to exchange for 2 sets of formations of better quality. Lee Myaoxu nodded, then picked up the teacup and took a sip. The formation is fine. Several masters in the sect have good attainments in formation. I will help you keep an eye out for them. As for the flying magic weapon, as far as I know, there are no good ones in the sect. He said this, and took out a shuttle-shaped magic weapon from the ring and handed it to Su Fan. I have one here, see if it suits your taste. Su Fan took the magic weapon and looked at it carefully. This shuttle-shaped magic weapon is more than 1 foot long and a little over 3 inches wide. There is a faint halo flowing all over it, and the natural and mysterious runes on it give people a feeling of being natural. This is the Greenwood Wind Shuttle, which was given to me by my family ancestor. Take a look and see if it suits your taste. Su Fan is now also a weapon refiner, and he knows what he is talking about. When he held this Greenwood Wind Shuttle in his hand, he felt something different. It was definitely a top-grade flying magic weapon from a famous family, and its quality was much better than his original Yinfeng boat. To be honest, the weapon refining level of the Central Plains Immortal Sect is much better than that of the Western Wasteland Demon Sect, not only in weapon refining, but also in making talismans, alchemy, formations and puppets. The level of the Central Plains Immortal Sect can surpass that of the Western Wasteland by several streets. Su Fan was very satisfied with this Greenwood Wind Shuttle and couldn't put it down and kept playing with it. He knew in his heart that the price of this magic weapon would definitely not be cheap, and even if you had spirit stones, you might not be able to buy it. This quality of top-grade flying magic weapons can only be seen occasionally at auctions. Senior, this magic weapon is very expensive. You gave it to me. Then what would you use it for? Lee Myaoxu felt relieved when she saw Su Fan like this Greenwood Wind Shuttle. She smiled and said, this is what I used before, but I don't need it now, thank you, senior. The cost will be deducted from the good deeds. If it's not enough, I will give you more spirit stones. Chapter 252 Clearing Supplies. Lee Myaoxu smiled and said, I don't need this magic weapon now, so I'll give it to you. How can you take it for free? Some bargains are really not worth taking. Free things are the most expensive. Senior, this won't work. Before he could finish, Lee Myaoxu's face turned unhappy. She stretched out her hand to Su Fan. Forget it if you don't want it. Then give it back to me. How could Su Fan return such a good thing? If you miss this opportunity, you will never get it again. Even if he has more spirit stones in the future, he won't be able to buy it. Senior, I want it, but I can't take it for free. I mean, spend spirit stones to buy it. I don't sell this thing. Go buy another one yourself. Lee Myaoxu had a stern face, her beautiful eyes sparkling and staring at him, looking serious. Su Fan was a little flustered by her stare, and could only nod helplessly. Okay, thank you, senior. Lee Myaoxu couldn't help but laughed. This smile was really bright and beautiful, just like the clear snow, so bright and beautiful that it was breathtaking. Su Fan only took a glance and felt his mind swaying, and quickly turned his head away from his sight. Who can resist such a beautiful girl? Seeing Su Fan's embarrassment, Lee Myaoxu's face flushed with an imperceptible blush, and her eyes were as clear as a mountain spring, very touching. The atmosphere was a little quiet for a while, and Su Fan didn't know how to respond, so he had to lower his head and play with a Kingmu Yufeng shuttle in his hand. Lee Myaoxu also experienced such an atmosphere for the first time, and felt a little uncomfortable, so she quickly found a topic. What kind of formation do you want? I will help you choose a few suitable ones. After listening to her words, Su Fan thought about it. There are many types of formations, but they are inseparable from defense, attack and kill, mystery, hiding and sealing. Forget about attacking and killing. It's not enough to face a strong opponent. The conceal is not useful for the time being. With his current strength, defense, mystery and hiding can be considered. Thinking of this, Su Fan smiled and said, "Then please help me find some defense, mystery and hiding formations." Lee Myaoxu nodded and said, "Okay, I'll help you think about it when the time comes." The two chatted for a few words and fell silent again. The scene became ambiguous again. Su Fan was also scratching his head. This senior sat down and didn't leave. He couldn't chase him out. To be honest, such a beautiful female cultivator sitting next to him should be a happy mood, but for some reason, Su Fan always felt that he was out of place. Lee Myaoxu's temperament is as ethereal as a fairy, quiet and gentle, revealing a sense of purity and transcendence. To put it bluntly, it is clean from the inside out. It can only be admired from a distance and not played with. Being with her, Su Fan always felt like he was sitting at the same table with a female top student in his previous life. It could also be that Su Fan had been in the demon sect for a long time, and later he accidentally practiced evil magic, so he was subjectively averse to this kind of pure temperament like a green lotus. Lee Myaoxu was different. She grew up in the immortal sect since she was a child, and no one she had ever met was like Su Fan. From the first time she met him, she felt that this person was different. Later, the two of them stayed together for a few days. And Lee Myaoxu could always feel a hint of evil from the other person. But what puzzled her most was that she was not only not repulsive, but was deeply attracted by the evil and charming temperament of the other person. Su Fan glanced at Lee Myaoxu opposite him. This couldn't go on. After all, it was a matter of a man and a woman staying together all the time. "Senior, you haven't eaten yet, right? Let's eat here at noon." He just wanted to be polite. After all, the other party was a girl, and she would definitely refuse when she heard him say that. Lee Myaoxu wanted to refuse after hearing this, and then said goodbye and left. Okay, but she didn't know what happened. She agreed to it. After Lee Myaoxu finished speaking, she realized that something was wrong. She gently pursed her red lips, her heartbeat became unbearably rapid, and her whole body was trembling slightly. This kind of stimulation she had never experienced before made her indulge in it and couldn't extricate herself. Su Fan was also confused. Did he get the wrong script? He was stunned for a long time before saying, "Senior, please wait a moment, I will go to prepare." Looking at Su Fan's leaving back, Lee Myaoxu's shame was slightly relieved, and her tense body finally relaxed. She let go of her hand and found that her palms were full of sweat. Only then did Lee Myaoxu come to her senses. She should have declined and said goodbye just now. But she actually agreed, which was so embarrassing. Thinking of this, Lee Myaoxu's breathing became rapid again, and her face was burning hot. Su Fan came to the kitchen next to the thatched cottage, turned around and looked at Lee Myaoxu by the pond, smiled bitterly and shook his head. Don't beat around the bush when talking to this foundation building senior in the future. Just say what you want to say. At noon, Su Fan prepared a table of sumptuous meals. Lee Myaoxu enjoyed the meal very much and praised his cooking skills. She didn't stay any longer after the meal and said goodbye and left. In the next month, Lee Myaoxu didn't come again, which also made him feel relieved. Su Fan has been in the cave, practicing hard day and night. Even though Lu Ocean sect has retreated, it is certain that it will come back at any time. Anyway, with the current situation of Haoian sect, the evil cult is bound to become stronger and stronger. If it continues to develop like this, maybe one day its strength will surpass Haoian sect. When that time comes, Haoian Immortal City may not be able to defend it. There are too many cultivators like Lee Myaoxu's second uncle in the various immortal sects in the Central Plains. For cultivators whose progress is stagnant or whose deadline is approaching, the temptation of the evil cult is too great. As long as there is even a glimmer of hope, they will not give up. Of course, the various immortal sects in the Central Plains are very powerful, and sooner or later they will completely wipe out the cult. But at least in the short term, the cult will be rampant for a while. So Su Fan dare not slack off now, and stays in the cave all day to practice hard, especially madly brushing the proficiency of the Purple Sky Thunder Sword art. After a month of hard practice, the Purple Sky Thunder Sword art is now close to perfection. After so long, I don't know what the market conditions of various cultivation resources in the city are. Su Fan was also afraid that he would not be able to catch up with this wave of dividends, so he left the cave and took the micro-transmission array to the city. He walked around the street and looked at the prices of various cultivation resources, and he immediately had a bottom line in his heart. Now the prices of various resources are high, and Su Fan doesn't want to wait any longer. Although the current market is still on the rise, it has tended to ease and stabilize, so it's better to sell the supplies in hand as soon as possible. Su Fan found an inn to open a room, then put on the Shura ghost mask, and performed the void spirit method to change his appearance and breath, and then returned to the street. He changed his identity several times and started to deliver goods to each store one by one. It took Su Fan several days to clear out all the supplies in his hands. Chapter 253. From now on you are mine. Although the security in Haoitun Immortal City is good, Su Fan is still very cautious. He doesn't show off his wealth. He kept changing his appearance and aura, and went to dozens of shops before dumping this batch of materials. In fact, Su Fan's stuff seemed to be quite a lot, but when thrown into Haoitun Immortal City, it didn't even make a splash. In addition to a few good quality Immortal Sex spiritual tools, some Haoitun Sex unique elixirs, and uncut spiritual stone ores, everything else was sold out by him. Even the spoil seized from the Zhou family cultivators in the western wilderness before, except for those with the characteristics of magic cultivation, the rest were sold out. It took him several days to clear out a batch of materials in his hands. If you count the large pile of spiritual stone ores in his hands, the total profit this time is more than 40,000 medium-grade spiritual stones. Su Fan took the micro-transmission array and returned to the cave. This time, it was really not in vain. He made a lot of money with this wave of dividends. Su Fan was happy today and wanted to reward himself at noon, so he prepared a large table of dishes and opened a bottle of spirit wine. After he finished his work, he sat at the table and poured himself a glass of spirit wine. Before he could drink it, the formation outside the cave was triggered. Su Fan walked over, opened the formation, and saw Li Maiaksu standing there. He was stunned for a moment, then said, "Senior, you are here." Although Su Fan felt quite disappointed, he still politely let Li Maiaksu into the cave. "Senior, you came at the right time. I just finished making lunch. Let's eat together." Li Maiaksu followed Su Fan into the cave and looked at the large table of dishes by the pond. "What day is today? You made so many dishes." Su Fan would of course not tell her the truth, and lied without thinking. "I have been practicing hard in the cave these days, and I have made a lot of progress. I want to reward myself." Li Maiaksu sat down at the table. Looking at the rich food on the table, her appetite was immediately aroused. "Haha. I came at the right time." What could Su Fan say? He suspected that this senior came at the right time on purpose. He took the jade bottle of spiritual wine and poured a glass of spiritual wine for Li Maiaksu. "Senior, I toast you." Li Maiaksu raised her glass, clinked it with Su Fan, and then took a sip. Her eyes widened. "This is spiritual wine." Seeing Su Fan nod, she grinned and fanned the wine with her hand. "No wonder it tastes so strong." Su Fan was speechless. "This is spiritual wine, and a glass is worth no less than spiritual stones." Li Maiaksu put down the glass, picked up the chopsticks and took a few bites of food. "By the way, give me your identity jade card." Su Fan was stunned for a moment, then took out his identity jade card and handed it to the other party. Li Maiaksu put down her chopsticks, took Su Fan's identity jade talisman, took out a miniature array plate, and then swept it with the jade talisman. "Okay, from now on you are mine." After she finished speaking, she returned the jade talisman to Su Fan with a happy face, and picked up the chopsticks to eat again. Su Fan took the jade talisman, his face full of confusion. "Oh, senior, what do you mean I am yours?" Li Maiaksu laughed and said, "In the future, when you respond to the sex recruitment, you must listen to my arrangements. Wherever I go, you go." Su Fan finally understood that this was the case. This is also good. This girl is a good person. At least she won't cheat herself. Li Maiaksu glanced at him and said with a bitter face, "Master heard about my affairs in Qiuhongfang and confined me to my house. I am not allowed to leave the fairy city." After hearing what the other party said, Su Fan was stunned. "Then how can I respond to the recruitment of seniors in the future?" Li Maiaksu smiled and said, "When it's your turn to apply, listen to my arrangements." Su Fan was even more confused. "You have been confined by the master. How can I listen to your arrangements? Just do what I tell you to do." After Li Maiaksu finished speaking, she saw that Su Fan was still confused, and smiled and shook her head. "Why are you so stupid? Anyway, you are under my control. For example, if you help me cook for a month, you will be considered to have completed the application. After listening to Lee Myak-soo's explanation, Su Fan suddenly realized that it could be played like this. He could complete the application of Heo-Iton sect without leaving the cave. This is a good relationship. Not to mention cooking for a month, even cooking for a year is fine. Su Fan really didn't expect that he would hug a big thick leg in Heo-Iton Xiancheng, where he was unfamiliar with the place. Senior, you don't like drinking, right? Lee Myak-soo nodded and said, well, I don't like spicy. Su Fan stood up quickly, trotted to the refrigerator, and took out 2 small jars. He knocked the 2 small jars apart, poured them into 2 transparent crystal cups, and then placed them in front of Lee Myak-soo. Senior, try it and see if it suits your taste. Lee Myak-soo was stunned. She put down her chopsticks and looked at the 2 crystal cups in front of her in confusion. One cup was clear and transparent rose color, and the other cup was gentle and moving pink. She glanced at Su Fan, then picked up the glass of wine, brought it to her mouth and took a sip. The chilled wine was sweet and mellow, very refreshing. Lee Myak-soo's eyes lit up and asked happily, is this also wine? Why does it taste different from other wines? It's not spicy at all. This is the wine I made with my own grapes. After hearing Su Fan's words, she looked incredible. You really made it yourself, it's good, Lee Myak-soo said, and pointed to the peach juice in another crystal cup. Is this also the wine you made? Su Fan shook his head and said, this is the juice I squeezed from the fairy peach, you try it. Lee Myak-soo was immediately interested, picked up the crystal cup and took a sip, and her beautiful eyes suddenly widened. This is icy and sweet, so delicious. Su Fan smiled, as long as you like to drink it, he has the most of this stuff. Like all kinds of freshly squeezed juices and gems, flavored dried fish and meat jerky, and candied fruits, they are all snacks that women love to eat. No woman can refuse these things. Take your time, anyway, if you want to live comfortably in Heo-Iton Fairy City, you have to hold this big thick leg no matter what. Today I only chilled peach juice. When you come back in a few days, I will chill some other flavors of juice for you. Lee Myak-soo took another big sip and said with a smile, okay. After she finished speaking, she put down the crystal cup and said with a smile, I won't drink your juice for nothing. Master has hidden a lot of spiritual wine. I'll give you a few bottles one day. Su Fan waved his hands and declined politely, no, but what he was thinking was that it would be better to give you a few more bottles. Lee Myak-soo drank the peach juice in the crystal cup in one gulp, and then picked up the jar and filled it up. By the way, I found the formation you wanted. After she finished speaking, she took out a storage bag from the ring and handed it to Su Fan. Su Fan took it, scanned it with his spiritual sense, and suddenly showed a hint of surprise on his face. There were actually 3 sets of formations in the storage bag. Chapter 254 This favor is too big. Su Fan took out 3 formations from his storage bag and examined them one by one. Lee Myak-soo drank a sip of iced peach juice, and then began to introduce the functions of the 3 formations to him. She pointed to a formation plate and said, this is the green shadow miscellaneous formation, which can conceal the aura of cultivators. Even if a giant and cultivator does not check carefully, he cannot see through this formation. It is just 36 formation flags, which is a bit troublesome to set up. Su Fan was secretly happy when he heard this. As long as he could hide it, he was not afraid of any trouble. His 6 yin hidden trace formation only had 12 formation flags, which was quick to set up, but in terms of the concealment effect, it was simply heaven and earth compared to this green shadow miscellaneous formation. Lee Myak-soo glanced at Su Fan, feeling that he was quite satisfied, and pointed to another formation. At this time, the defensive formation 4 Elephant Black Tortoise formation can defend against a full-strength attack of a late giant and cultivator. The 18 formation flags can be quickly deployed and can be used in a battle if conditions permit. Su Fan was also very satisfied with this formation. After all, it can withstand the full-strength attack of a giant and cultivator and can even be used in a battle, which is a bit against the sky. Lee Myak-soo pointed to the last formation and introduced it. This is the psychedelic formation Thousand Trees Killing formation. There are a total of 24 formation flags, which can be transformed into dense forest to confuse the cultivators who enter the formation. If used in a forest environment, the effect will be multiplied. Su Fan picked up the 3 formation plates one by one and looked at them repeatedly. It must be said that the formation attainments of the Central Plains Immortal sect are indeed much stronger than those of the Western Wasteland. Back then, he didn't see many decent formations in the auction house of the Western Wasteland Immortal City. Even if a formation of ordinary quality appeared, it would be instantly snatched up at a premium. Su Fan knew that these sets of top-grade formations were not available on the market and could only appear at auctions. "Senior, I'm afraid that my good deeds can't be exchanged for these sets of formations," Lee Myaxa laughed and said. "If it weren't for the set of Green Shadow Mihuan formation, I would have come to you a long time ago. This was specially made by a formation master in the sect, and it didn't cost much good deeds." After she finished speaking, she glanced at Su Fan again and continued, "The remaining 2 sets of formations were exchanged by me at the treasure pavilion of the sect with good deeds. The good deeds of both of us are almost enough." Although Lee Myaxa said it lightly, Su Fan knew very well that only she was a giant and disciple of Hao-Idan sect, and the formation master gave face. If someone else used more good deeds, he would not care. Not to mention the set of Green Shadow Mihuan formation, with his little good deeds, I'm afraid he couldn't even buy the other 2 sets of formations. Su Fan knew that he owed this person too much favor. Although Lee Myaxa didn't care about that little bit of good deeds, she still had to ask the formation master to customize a set of exquisite formations. How much of a favor was that? But in Su Fan's opinion, for these 3 sets of exquisite formations, it was worth it no matter how big the favor was. After all, the favor could be repaid slowly in the future, but without the help of Lee Myaxa, where could he get these sets of exquisite formations? Although the fighting power of the cultivators of the Central Plains Immortal sect was sluggish, their attainments in elixirs, talismans, instruments, and formations were really powerful. Su Fan put away 3 sets of formations, and then solemnly bowed to Lee Myaxa. "Thank you, Senior. If you have any requests in the future, Su Fan will do his best." Seeing Su Fan so serious, Lee Myaxa felt a little embarrassed. "Why thank me? If it weren't for you, I don't know how many times I would have died in Kiu Hong Fang." She laughed and said, "If you want to thank me, then cook more delicious food for me in the future." "Okay, I don't know anything else, but my cooking skills are okay." "Senior, what do you want to eat tonight?" Lee Myaxa laughed and said, "Then make your best." In order to hold on to this thigh, Su Fan specially prepared barbecue at night, mixed some refreshing mixed vegetables, and finally cut some braised food and pickles. To be honest, most people can't stand the temptation of barbecue. Su Fan set up the grill on the pavilion on the mountain, and then put rows of ingredients on the grill, such as meat skewers, meat tendons, chicken hearts, chicken skin, chicken gizzards, wings, chicken cartilage, oil edges, kidneys, ling mushrooms, etc. Grilled until oily, then brushed with barbecue condiments. Pick up a skewer and you can eat it. Lee Myaxa was no exception. She was reserved at first, but later on, she held a skewer in each hand and ate until her mouth was full of oil. From time to time, she would pick up the crystal cup next to her and take a sip of ice juice. The pores of her body were sour and refreshing. "Su Fan, did you grow all the fruits for these freshly squeezed juices yourself?" "Well, I used to grow some vegetables and fruit trees around the cave. The cave here is rented. I can grow some vegetables in the spiritual field, but I can't grow fruit trees." After hearing Su Fan's words, Lee Myaxa immediately became energetic. "I have a cave on the mountain, which is more than 10 times larger than yours. I usually practice at the mountain gate. It has been empty. You might as well move there." Su Fan shook his head quickly after hearing this. No matter how small this cave was, it was his own. What was the point of moving to someone else's cave? "I live well here, so I won't bother." Hearing Su Fan say this, Lee Myaxa was a little disappointed. She suddenly thought of something. "Then can you help me plant some fruit trees in that cave?" Su Fan smiled bitterly and said, "That's fine, but this will destroy the environment of the cave." Lee Myaxa heard it and waved her hand nonchalantly. "It's okay, I'll leave it to you, do whatever you want." From that day on, the relationship between Su Fan and Lee Myaxa began to become more and more familiar. Although the two of them were at different realms, neither Su Fan nor Lee Myaxa took it seriously. With Lee Myaxa as a thigh, Su Fan's life in Hao-Idan Immortal City became more and more comfortable. In the following few recruitments of Hao-Idan sect, Su Fan never left the cave because of Lee Myaxa's endorsement. This also allowed Su Fan to practice with peace of mind. For several months, Although the progress of the skills was still slow, he was making progress every day. After unremitting efforts, Su Fan finally practiced the Purple Sky Thunder sword art to perfection. It was not until this time that he dared to say that he was a sword cultivator in front of others. In addition to the skills and sword techniques, he also learned all kinds of spells and magical powers, especially the 2 new magical powers, which took up a lot of his time and energy. Li Maiaxu's cave is located at the highest point of Haoyun Immortal City, covering hundreds of acres. It not only has beautiful scenery, but also abundant spiritual energy. Su Fan asked Li Maiaxu to find all kinds of fruit trees in the secular world. He planted all these fruit trees in the cave without destroying the overall environment of the cave. After several months of growth, they are now full of fruits. Li Maiaxu usually practices in the mountain gate, and her master only allows her to go down the mountain twice a month. Now she doesn't even go back to her family, and she always comes to Su Fan to eat and drink. Of course, she doesn't eat and drink for free. Over the past few months, Li Maiaxu not only stole several bottles of spiritual wine from her master, but also stole several kilograms of spiritual tea. Su Fan calculated that these things alone are worth 1,800 medium-grade spiritual stones. The cold winter has arrived, and the north wind is devastating. At some point, the dark clouds in the sky gradually thickened, and the fine snow gradually turned into heavy snow. It snowed heavily today, and the snowflakes, like pure white plum blossoms, fell from the sky. The earth was covered in white, which was very beautiful. Su Fan and Li Maiaxu set up a pot in the pavilion on the mountain. They sat cross-legged in front of the kang table and kept putting ingredients into the hot pot. After a few months of getting along, Li Maiaxu had been corrupted by Su Fan. Although she was still dignified and quiet outside, she showed her true colors when she came to Su Fan. Li Maiaxu rolled up her sleeves and fished in the pot with chopsticks. There was no way, she and Su Fan were eating together, and she really couldn't eat without fighting. On a cold winter night, the north wind was blowing outside, but the cave was warm as spring. Looking at the snowflakes outside, the two drank wine and ate the steaming pot, feeling extremely timid. Su Fan took a sip of wine and asked, "Is the evil cult outside still making trouble?" Li Maiaxu picked up a piece of pork head with chopsticks. She didn't mind the heat, dipped it in the sauce and stuffed it into her mouth. She exhaled with her teeth bared, and then took a sip of iced wine. This evil cult is getting more and more violent, and the sect can no longer control the situation. Su Fan frowned, raised his head and drank a glass of spiritual wine. Then this Haoyun Immortal City will not be affected. Li Maiaxu smiled bitterly and said, "Now the sect can control the situation only within a radius of tens of thousands of miles of the Mountain Gate and the Immortal City. If the evil cult becomes powerful in the future, how should the Haoyun sect deal with it?" After hearing what Su Fan said, Li Maiaxu smiled. "It's okay. Several super sects in the Central Plains have already reached a truce with the Western Wasteland. And it won't be long before the various sects in the East Sea, the sword cultivators and magic cultivators in the Western Wasteland will enter the Central Plains to help us encircle and suppress the evil cultivators." Su Fan was stunned when he heard this. It was understandable that the cultivators from the East Sea and the sword cultivators from the Western Wasteland came to the Central Plains, but why did they also bring the demon cultivators? It seems that the Central Plains Xianzhuang can't hold on any longer. Although the sword cultivators are recognized as the strongest in combat power, the demon sects have the most ways to deal with the evil cultivators. The demon cultivators are not only powerful in combat, but also have all kinds of sinister and treacherous methods emerging one after another, just like the nemesis of the evil cultivators. Chapter 255, You Can't Let People Down. After hearing what Li Maiaxu said, Su Fan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He never thought that the immortals and demons, who were originally incompatible, would actually make peace. That's not all. The immortal sect also allowed the demon cultivators to enter the Central Plains. This was the first time in history. In fact, it is understandable that once the Luotian sect became popular in the Central Plains, both the Western Wilderness and the East China Sea would be affected. This Luotian sect, which suddenly emerged a few years ago, has been extremely weird since the day it was born, whether it was teaching in dreams or worshipping the demon statue. Su Fan's personal guess is that the Luotian sect must be related to Daluotian. Tens of thousands of years ago, Daluotian was the mortal enemy of all cultivators in this world. Everyone knows the truth that the lips and teeth are cold. Li Maiaxu took a sip of wine and then patted her stomach. "I'm so full, it's all your fault," Su Fan laughed and said. "You're so unreasonable. It's obviously you who's greedy, but you blame me, who told you to cook so deliciously, and let me eat so much every time." After Li Maiaxu finished speaking, she fell to the ground without any ladylike image, propped her head with her hands, and enjoyed the falling snow comfortably. She grew up in Haoyun sect since she was a child. The immortal sect has many rules and regulations. She must pay attention to her words and deeds on weekdays and be dignified no matter where she is. Only here with Su Fan can she completely relax and do whatever she wants. Su Fan took a sip of wine and then asked, "What are you majoring in?" "Master asked me to learn the art of formation with him, but I didn't learn it because I thought it was too brain-consuming. The art of alchemy and the art of weapons are too worldly, and I don't like the fighting and killing every day in the art of magic, so I chose the art of talismans." Hearing that she majored in the art of talismans, Su Fan immediately became interested. "I have also learned to make talismans." Li Maiaxu sat up quickly and asked, "You also practice the art of talismans?" Su Fan smiled bitterly and said, "I am a casual cultivator. I make talismans just to make a living. I can also refine weapons, but I only know a little bit." This is true. Although he had systematically learned some knowledge of the art of sacrifice from his senior brother in Yingluo sect, the level of the demon sect is only slightly better than that of casual cultivators compared with Zhangyin and Xianzong. Li Maiaxu became more energetic and asked, "What kind of talismans can you draw?" After hearing Su Fan say a few names of talismans, she laid down again and didn't even want to communicate. She could draw these low and medium quality talismans in the early stage of key training. The talismans sold in various shops in Haoyun and Xiancheng were all provided by low-level talisman masters like Su Fan. The disciples of the sect would not even look at such talismans. Su Fan sighed. He didn't expect that he would be despised by Li Maiaxu. The Zhangyin and Xianzong is like a university in the previous life. Unlike the demon sect, which focuses on actual combat, the disciples of the sect receive a very systematic education from a young age. Even the high-level talisman masters among the casual cultivators are amateurs in the eyes of the immortal sect's talisman cultivators. Just like those Peking opera enthusiasts in the previous life, in the eyes of professional Peking opera actors, no matter how well they sing, they are just amateurs. Li Maiaxu suddenly took out a jade slip and placed it on her forehead. After a while, she put the jade slip on the table and sat up. "You brew a pot of spiritual tea, so that I can get rid of the greasiness." Su Fan hurriedly took out a clay stove, then took out the spiritual charcoal and brewed a pot of spiritual tea. Li Maiaxu drank the tea for a while, then said goodbye and left. Su Fan sent her out of the cave, and for some reason, he felt that she was a little strange. He returned to the pavilion on the mountain, sat next to the Kang table, and poured himself a cup of spiritual tea. Su Fan picked up the teacup and took a sip, and suddenly saw the jade slip on the table. His heart moved. He reached out to take the jade slip, thought about it, and then put it on his forehead. After a while, Su Fan put down the jade slip, smiled bitterly and shook his head. "This girl is really interesting." The contents recorded in the jade slip are all the knowledge related to the basic talismans of Haoyun sect. It is nothing to the disciples of Xianzong, but it is extraordinary in Su Fan's eyes. After all, it is the jade slip of the talisman inheritance of the Central Plains major sect. Compared with the Shuayan Fujing of that year, it is completely heaven and earth. Shuayan sect is just a small sect in the western wilderness. The experience of making talismans passed down is indeed of great help to Su Fan, a talisman novice. Su Fan's experience in making talismans in these years depends entirely on this Shuayan Fujing. But compared with the jade slip of Haoyun sect, the Shuayan Fujing is obviously not a small level. Although Su Fan can also improve his experience in making talismans by constantly brushing data on the game panel, he has clearly felt his bottleneck recently. That is, when trying to learn the top-grade talismans, even with the support of the game panel, the progress is still extremely slow. The problem may come from the lack of sufficient theoretical foundation. Although he has a high success rate in making talismans, the talismans he draws give people the feeling that they are mass-produced on a production line. Of course, the talismans made by Su Fan are very popular in ordinary talisman shops, but in the eyes of talisman experts, they lack a little bit of charm. At this time, the jade slip left by Li Maiaxu is really timely. Su Fan was not polite. He picked up the jade slip again and put it on his forehead, and began to study it carefully. No matter what, He couldn't live up to others' kindness. In the next 2 days, Su Fan hardly slept, and he carefully studied the jade slip every moment. He also recorded the contents of the jade slip in Chinese characters on animal skin paper, leaving it for future study. At noon that day, Li Maiaxu came again. When she saw Su Fan, she asked, "Did I drop a jade slip that day?" Su Fan nodded, took out a jade slip from his storage bag, and handed it to Li Maiaxu. "Finally found it, I thought I lost it." Li Maiaxu put the jade slip into her ring with joy, and then looked at Su Fan with a vigilant face. "You didn't peek." Su Fan almost laughed, but he forced himself to hold back, and shook his head calmly. "No." Li Maiaxu smiled and said, "I don't think you dare. What delicious food did you make for lunch?" "I'm hungry. I didn't know you were coming, so I stewed 2 casseroles. Next time before you come, tell me in advance so that I can prepare it in advance." After hearing Su Fan's words, Li Maiaxu smiled, and then walked towards the kitchen. "What casserole? Is it delicious?" "Beef offal stewed with radish, dried beans stewed with pork belly." After taking back the jade slip, Li Maiaxu's mood obviously improved. It was as if the knot in her heart had been untied, and she felt much more relaxed. It was estimated that she was also very entangled in the past 2 days. Li Maiaxu came to the kitchen and saw 2 large clay pots on the stove, steaming. She walked over and lifted the lids, got burned, and laughed heartlessly. "Ah! I'm so burned." Chapter 256. No one can fight. Seeing Li Maiaxu's cheerful look, Su Fan couldn't help but sigh. This girl is really good to him. Not only is she beautiful, but she is also a good person. Unfortunately, she is not his type. He walked over and lifted the lids of the 2 casseroles. The tempting aroma instantly hit his nose. Li Maiaxu also came over and smelled it. "It smells so good. When can it be stewed?" "Of course it smells good. I have been stewing it for a whole morning. You go and wait over there. It will be ready in a while." Looking at Li Maiaxu's back, Su Fan thought for a while and took out a box from his ring. There were river shrimps in it. Now there are only so many left, and he has never been willing to eat them. Su Fan put the river shrimps in a small basin, then poured some strong liquor into it to soak, took out some ice cubes from the refrigerator and put them in, and finally covered the lid. The dish he made is the drunk shrimp that senior sister loves to eat the most. Su Fan fried some of the remaining river shrimps in oil and made a crispy river shrimp, which is also what senior sister likes to eat. Looking at the 2 dishes in front of him, Su Fan missed his senior sister again. His senior sister loved river shrimps. After a while, the 2 casseroles were finally cooked. Su Fan took the king table to the side of the pond and set it up. Then he put several dishes on the table and invited Li Maiaxu to eat. Li Maiaxu sat cross-legged and asked hurriedly when she saw the drunken shrimps on the plate, "How come these shrimps are alive?" Su Fan smiled, peeled one and handed it to her. "Try it, it's very fresh." Li Maiaxu took it with a frown. She was obviously a little resistant, but after listening to Su Fan's words, she put it in her mouth. As soon as she chewed it, her eyes lit up. "It's delicious." Su Fan looked at her and couldn't help but think of the scene when his senior sister ate drunken shrimps for the first time. Li Maiaxu was in a very good mood today. After eating this meal, she ate a whole pot of drunken shrimps. After lunch, Li Maiaxu left. In fact, she came here today just to get back the inheritance jade slip. In the next few days, Su Fan has been studying and pondering the contents of the inheritance jade slip in the cave. In addition to practicing every day, the rest of the time is spent on making talismans. It may be because of studying the jade slip that Su Fan feels that his level of talisman making has obviously improved a little. This feeling is very wonderful, just like opening a seal, allowing him to always find a trace of spiritual charm that he didn't have before in the process of making talismans. Legend has it that the production and drawing of high-level talismans are all improvised, and the emphasis is on making them casually and according to the intention. When the talisman is completed, the heaven and earth weep, and the ghosts and gods are shocked. Now Su Fan seems to have found the fun of making talismans again. He makes talismans tirelessly in the talisman making room every day. And every time he gains something, he can always find some inspiration, but it is a little hard to grasp. Su Fan knows in his heart that he has touched the threshold of the talisman path, and he may be able to break through that piece of paper one day. This morning, Su Fan simply packed up, left the cave, and took a small teleportation array to the city. He came to the talisman shop again and followed the owner to the back hall. The owner was obviously more enthusiastic than before. He personally brewed a pot of spiritual tea for him and poured a cup for him. "Devours, you brought talismans this time. From what you said, your shop can't even accept talismans recently," the owner complained to Su Fan with a bitter face. In the past few months, the price of talisman paper and ink has almost skyrocketed. Although the price of talismans is also rising, the cost of making talismans is too high. The talisman masters think it is not cost-effective. "My shop is almost out of talismans to sell." It seems that the spiritual fields, spiritual mines and market around Haoyun Immortal City have not fully recovered from the looting of the evil cultivators a few months ago. Even the yellow spiritual grass for making talisman paper can't keep up. Seeing that Su Fan didn't say anything, the owner hurriedly asked another question. "Devours, have you made talismans recently?" Su Fan nodded and took out a stack of talismans from his storage bag and put them on the table. Looking at the talismans on the table, the shop owner suddenly smiled. He picked up the talismans, looked at them one by one, and his expression changed immediately. "Hey, Taoist friend, these talismans of yours," Su Fan smiled and said. "Taoist friend, you mean that these talismans are not pleasing to your eyes?" The shop owner waved his hands and said with a smile, No, I mean that Taoist friend's talisman making skills have improved." "Oh. Taoist friend, what did you see?" The shop owner frowned and shook his head uncertainly. "I don't know either. I just think that your talisman is well drawn, and the spiritual pattern seems to be alive." After listening to the shop owner's words, Su Fan also had a plan in his mind, knowing that his level of talisman making should have broken through the bottleneck. The shop owner put away the talismans and poured Su Fan a cup of spiritual tea. "Alice, when will this kind of life end?" Su Fan comforted him. "Devours, don't worry. I heard that the sect in the East China Sea may enter the Central Plains in a while." The shop owner's eyes widened immediately after hearing this. "Devours, are you serious?" Su Fan regretted it as soon as he finished speaking. In fact, he just heard Li Maiaxu say it, and he didn't know whether it was true. But Li Maiaxu is a disciple of a giant and cultivator, and her status in the Haoyun sect was not ordinary, so what she said should still be reliable. "I also heard it from others. Devours, don't take it seriously." Although Su Fan said so, the shop owner really took it to heart, and the more he thought about it, the more he felt that this was possible. "Devours, since there's news, it is not groundless. This matter is probably true." Su Fan took a sip of spiritual tea and wanted to change the subject. "Any news about the evil cultivators outside the city recently?" The shop owner poured him a cup of spiritual tea, looked outside the house, and then came over. He whispered in Su Fan's ear, "I heard that Haoyun sect has withdrawn all the disciples from the mortal world." Su Fan heard Li Maiaxu talk about this matter. Now Haoyun sect has lost control of the situation. It seems that the cultivators from the western wasteland and the East China Sea will soon enter the Central Plains. If things continue to develop like this, even if Lu Ocean sect is wiped out, the various secular kingdoms in the mortal world will completely become sacrifices of the cult. The secular kingdom is the foundation of the various immortal sects in the Central Plains. Without a large number of mortals, where will the immortal sects recruit disciples in the future? The shop owner sighed. "Our Central Plains has been peaceful for too long. It is said that the cultivators in the East China Sea are very powerful." It was the first time that Su Fan heard someone talk about the East China Sea, so he asked the shop owner about the situation there. Although the East China Sea is rich in resources, the sects there are close to the endless sea. They fight with the Sea Clan all year round, and they experience a beast tide every few decades. Su Fan suddenly realized it. No wonder, the monks who grew up in such an environment must have extraordinary combat power. Needless to say, in the Western wilderness, the monks of the demon sect have been training and fighting in the 100,000-mile demon abyss for many years. They are cruel and violent, and they are really ruthless when killing evil cultivators. It is better to kill 1,000 by mistake than to let one go. As soon as the evil cult appeared in the Western wilderness, it was bloodbathed by the demon sect. Now the Lu Ocean sect can't make any waves in the Western wilderness. It is said that the environment in the South Barbarians is even worse. The immortal sect, the demon sect, the witch sect and the evil cultivators are intricately entangled together, and they fight all year round. In addition, there are demons who occupy nearly half of the area of the South Barbarians, and they often launch beast tides to erode the human territory to the north. Whenever the demons launch a beast tide, the immortal sect, the demon sect, the witch sect and the evil cultivators will put aside their grievances and unite to resist the attacks of the demons, and continue to fight after the beast tide ends. What's more interesting is that in the past, whenever the evil demons of Daluocean invaded this world, the demons would stand together with a human race to resist the evil demons from foreign lands. Looking at the Central Plains, it is really hard to describe. They obviously have the best resources, but they have a bunch of nerds. The high-end combat power is of course the strongest in the Central Plains, but when it comes to the low-level cultivators, there is really no one who can fight. But what Su Fan can't understand is that there are so many Yuanying masters in the Central Plains, why don't they take action at this time? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 257 There is no such good thing. Just after noon, Su Fan walked out of the micro-teleportation array. He had been making talismans in the cave these days and had accumulated a lot of talismans. Su Fan sold the talismans in the talisman shop, and then went to various shops in the city. Now the prices of various cultivation materials in the shops in the city are still high, but the supply is becoming more and more sufficient. Su Fan just walked out of a shop, and suddenly his eyes fixed. His intuition told him that someone seemed to be following him. Su Fan continued to stroll calmly, and when he entered a shop, he suddenly leaned against the porch of the shop and glanced outside. He saw a monk dressed as a casual cultivator, slowly walking past the door of the shop, pretending to look into the shop casually. Across the street, two monks stopped and stood there chatting about something. In addition to these three people, there were several people standing on the corner in the distance. Although these people were not noticeable at all in the busy streets, Su Fan knew that they had followed him all the way. Maybe he had been spotted since he came out of the cave. Su Fan frowned in confusion. Since he came to Haoin Immortal City, he has been very careful and low-key. Except for the talisman shop he often went to, he would change his appearance and figure at other times, and even his training aura was different. It was impossible to reveal any traces. But how did these people target him? Su Fan thought about it, walked out of the shop as if nothing had happened, and turned into a narrow alley not far away. As soon as he entered this dark alley, his pace suddenly accelerated, and he turned several forks in a row. Su Fan came to a deserted place, and there was a flash of lightning under his feet, and he had disappeared from the spot. As soon as his figure disappeared, several casual cultivators followed him. They looked around and then hurriedly dispersed. After a while, a casual cultivator walked into a restaurant and came to a private room on the second floor. At this time, a handsome young man was sitting in the private room. He was wearing the standard robe of Haoyuan sect and had the 9th level of key training. He glanced at the frustrated expression of the casual cultivator and asked in a deep voice, "Where's the person I told you to follow?" After hearing the other party's words, the casual cultivator's forehead suddenly broke out in cold sweat. "I lost him, you useless people, you can even lose someone. Next month's offerings will be increased by 30%. Get lost." The casual cultivator was as if he had been pardoned. He wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and quickly left the private room. Looking at the casual cultivator who was walking away in embarrassment, the Haoyuan sect disciple thought for a moment and took off a jade talisman from his waist. "Second uncle, I found the person for you." "Who is this person?" "He is just an outside casual cultivator, who seems to be a talisman master." "A casual cultivator, is he correct?" "No, I'm sure. I really spent a lot of effort to find him." "Okay, don't worry about what happens next." The casual cultivator walked out of the restaurant, and several subordinates who were waiting outside quickly surrounded him. "Boss, what's going on?" The casual cultivator took a deep breath and said angrily, "What else can it be? The tribute for next month has increased by 30%. He waved his hand and sent several of his men away. He turned around and looked at the restaurant with hatred, and then left angrily. After a while, the casual cultivator came to a courtyard in the city. As soon as he pushed the door and walked into the courtyard, he felt a black screen in front of his eyes, and then he knew nothing. Su Fan carried the casual cultivator into a room and pressed him against the wall. His eyes focused and activated the Thunder Eye's magical power, and the other party's expression began to become blurred. After asking the information he wanted to know, Su Fan broke the other party's neck, then devoured his ghost and put the body into the ring. Su Fan walked out of the yard with a gloomy face. According to the casual cultivator, he was the boss of a casual cultivator gang in the city. A few days ago, a disciple from the Foreign Affairs Hall of Haoyun sect asked him to follow him. They have been guarding outside their cave for several days. Su Fan thought about it and thought it was because of Li Maiaxu. Only she could make the people of Haoyun sect pay attention to him. He couldn't help but sigh. He and Li Maiaxu had indeed been too close recently. Su Fan returned to the cave with a heavy heart and sat cross-legged on the futon to think about countermeasures. He knew in his heart that if it was because of Li Maiaxu, he might not be able to stay in Haoyun Xiancheng. At this time, the jade talisman on Su Fan's waist vibrated. He took the jade talisman off his waist and found that it was a message from Li Maiaxu. Su Fan, Master said that I have been too lazy in cultivation recently and asked me to retreat for half a year. I am afraid I can't leave the mountain gate in the next 2 months. Su Fan smiled bitterly. It seems that his guess was right. Haha. You are indeed too lazy. It's time to retreat and practice hard for a while. You are still laughing. I am so angry. I don't know who went to Master and said that I always go to Xiancheng. Master scolded me severely. Su Fan sneered. This person should be one of Li Maiaxu's suitors. Half a year has passed in a flash, so fast. What if I crave the delicious food you made? What should I do? Who told you to be so greedy? Haha, I'm ignoring you. You're still laughing at me at this time. Okay, I won't laugh at you anymore. Come over when you come out. By the way, during my retreat, I have arranged your application. You just need to stay in my cave in the city for a month. Su Fan sighed. There will never be such a good thing in the future. It is estimated that in less than 2 days, someone from Haoyun sect will come to the door. Instead of waiting for them to come, it is better to take the initiative to leave here and avoid a lot of unnecessary trouble. The two chatted for a long time, and Li Maiaxu reluctantly cut off the jade talisman of the message. He didn't want to tell her these trivial things, and it would be useless even if he told her. In fact, he could guess what Li Maiaxu meant. This girl is really good, but it's a pity that the immortals and demons are incompatible, and the gap between the two is too big. After staying in Haoyun Immortal City for so long, it's time to leave. Thinking of this, Su Fan began to pack his luggage and put all the facilities in the cave into the stored ring. He looked at the cave again and took a deep breath. The world is so big, isn't there a place for him to stay quietly? Why is it so difficult to survive in this world of cultivation? Su Fan shook his head, turned around and used the jade talisman to open the formation, and then walked out of the cave. He came out of the cave with a gloomy face, and his consciousness was completely released and spread around. Several cultivators hiding nearby saw Su Fan walk out of the cave and took out the jade talisman for sending messages. Su Fan sneered and his eyes suddenly condensed. Before they could send the message, their heads buzzed, as if they were hit hard by a heavy hammer. Their eyes went black, and their souls were instantly mixed into pulp, and then spread to the ground. Su Fan took out the Ashura ghost mask and put it on his face, changing his appearance and body shape. He took the micro-teleportation array to the city. At this time, the casual cultivators guarding outside the micro-teleportation array did not receive any information from their companions. So Su Fan walked out of the teleportation array in a swagger, and no one paid attention to him. He looked up at the direction of his cave, turned around and walked towards the city gate. Su Fan had just taken a few steps when he suddenly stopped. He turned around abruptly and looked at a place in the city. Chapter 258 Yuanying Celestial Phenomenon. Su Fan's eyes were fixed on the direction of the mountain gate of Haoyun sect in the distance. He saw a 5-colored spiritual cloud of dozens of feet in size formed above a huge peak in the distant mountains. The 5-colored spiritual cloud continued to expand, and countless spiritual energy rushed away as if attracted. The cloud became wider and wider, and soon reached a size of hundreds of feet, and was still expanding. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth gathered into a group, forming a colorful vortex on the giant peak, madly devouring the spiritual energy of heaven and earth around it. And this vortex became bigger and bigger, and soon mobilized the spiritual energy of heaven and earth within a radius of hundreds of miles. The purple cloud of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth continued to compress its volume, and the 5-colored light spots were still constantly filing the 5-colored cloud. At this moment, a howling wind suddenly blew, and the area within dozens of miles around Haoyuan Xianchang suddenly became gloomy, as if it was before a sudden rain. Thunder tribulation, someone in Haoyuan sect is about to break through. Nascent soul celestial phenomenon, that is nascent soul celestial phenomenon. Who is condensing nascent soul? Could it be a giant and senior in Haoyuan sect? At this time, the cultivators in the city also discovered the strange phenomenon of heaven and earth at the gate of Haoyuan sect, and shouted loudly. In the caves on the mountains in the city, more than a dozen figures suddenly soared into the sky. Su Fan looked up and was shocked. These people were all Jindan cultivators. I didn't expect that there were so many Jindans living in seclusion in Haoyuan Immortal City. At this time, the five-color vortex was already dozens of miles wide, mobilizing all the spiritual energy within a radius of 1,000 miles, but it still devoured the spiritual energy of heaven and earth without end. The top of the giant peak was now completely covered by the power of the five-color vortex. The sky and the earth also changed color. The originally clear sky was now gray, and only the five-color vortex above was still flashing brilliant light. Boom! The huge peaks in the distance suddenly shook. Then, endless spiritual energy flashed continuously, and a huge light shield enveloped the area of nearly 100 miles. The mountain protection formation of Haoyuan sect was activated. Suddenly, a huge force that was as powerful as destroying the world came roaring in an instant. The key training cultivators in the city were all stiff and unable to move, and many of them with poor cultivation collapsed directly on the ground. The dozen or so giant cultivators who had just rushed into the sky were also suppressed by this huge spiritual pressure, and their spiritual power seemed to be imprisoned, and they all returned to the ground. Su Fan gritted his teeth, forced himself to stabilize his body, and looked up at the five-colored vortex in the sky with horror. This is the Yuanying celestial phenomenon. He had seen the record of the Yuanying celestial phenomenon in the ancient book in the Tibetan Dharma Hall of Yinlo sect before. Now the celestial phenomenon has been completed, and the next is the ninefold thunder tribulation. At this moment, the dark clouds in the sky were getting thicker and thicker. The dark clouds were constantly rolling. An arc as thick as arms kept rolling in the dark clouds. Every time it flashed, there would be a rumbling thunder. After brewing, the lightning gradually took shape. The blooming lightning flashed, illuminating half of the sky. The dark clouds that covered the sky and the sun were torn apart by thunder from time to time, and the light was dazzling. There was a sudden silence between heaven and earth. Rumble. A loud noise that resounded through the 8 wastelands came from the five-colored clouds that were boiling like boiling water. A silver light instantly penetrated the world, and a thick thunder roared down from the sky. Then there were 2 thick silver thunders, which struck the giant peak one after another. The explosions of the thunder of heaven and earth made Su Fan dizzy. This was the first level of thunder tribulation, with a total of 3 thunders. Each subsequent level of thunder will double, until the last 9981 thunders. Looking at the dark clouds brewing in the sky, Su Fan couldn't help but shudder. Although he was a thunder body and had been baptized by thunder and lightning, it was nothing compared to the nascent soul heavenly tribulation in front of him. If that kind of thunder that destroyed the heaven and earth struck down, with his current physical strength, the first level of thunder tribulation would smash him to pieces. Boom! The second thunder finally roared down. 6 thick silver thunders fell from the sky one after another. At this time, a small triangular flag soared into the sky, turned into a radius of dozens of feet, and instantly unfolded in front of the thunder. 6 lightning flashes passed by, and the huge triangular flag fluttering in the wind was destroyed and tattered, and fell down with all its spirituality lost. At this moment, the leaden clouds in the sky rolled like the sea. The second level of heavenly tribulation had not yet arrived, but it gave people a feeling of impending death. Boom! A thunder that was thicker than the previous 2 levels of heavenly tribulation roared in. At this time, a golden giant tripod suddenly rose into the sky, turned into 100 feet in size and blocked the giant peak. Boom! 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 Then 9 consecutive lightning flashes, like a giant net intertwined together, seemed to wrap up the giant peak completely, and kept falling down. After the thunder and lightning raged, the golden giant tripod had dimmed and quickly shrank and fell from the sky. Su Fan took a deep breath. This was only the 3rd level of the nascent soul heavenly tribulation, and it was already so brutal. The next 6 levels of thunder tribulation, who knows how fierce it would be. At this moment, Su Fan couldn't help but worry about the senior from Haoan sect. Just when everyone stopped and waited for the next 6 heavenly tribulations, they suddenly found that the thick thunder clouds in the sky were actually showing signs of gradually dissipating. What happened? It's only 3 thunder tribulations and it's gone. That senior, did you fail to break through? The giant and celestial phenomenon must be 6 thunder tribulations. The cultivators in Haoan Immortal City looked up at the thunder clouds that were gradually dissipating in the sky and started to discuss. At this moment, the thunder clouds had dispersed layer by layer, as if the sun was rising, and the whole sky was blue. Su Fan frowned. It was clearly the Yuanying celestial phenomenon just now. But why was there only 3 thunder tribulations? The most bizarre thing was that the senior didn't seem to have failed to break through. Suddenly, Su Fan's eyes condensed. His nose twitched a few times, and his face turned pale at that time. Because he smelled a trace of evil demon breath. This breath became stronger and stronger, and even the cultivators in the city felt different, and their faces showed horror. Boom! With a loud noise that shook the earth, bursts of black demonic smoke suddenly emerged from the direction of the Haoan sect's mountain gate in the distance. The dark smoke spread everywhere, and soon covered the gate of Haoan sect. Finally, the entire Haoan Immortal City was covered by the smoke. Boom! A dazzling light suddenly penetrated the sky and rushed into the endless void. The smoke that originally covered the sky and the sun dissipated in an instant, but what appeared in everyone's eyes at this moment was indeed a strange vast starry sky. Su Fan raised his head and looked at the strange vast starry sky. At this moment, his heart was already set off by a huge wave, because he had seen this vast starry sky before. Chapter 259 It's all up to God. Su Fan looked up, looking at the vast starry sky with an extremely solemn expression. He had seen the starry sky in the West Wilderness Demon Tomb before, but it was far less magnificent and grand, almost covering the entire mountain range of the Haoan sect's mountain gate. Although he didn't know what happened, he could guess that something big must have happened. It should be a giant and Daquin cultivator of the Haoan sect who used evil methods to forcibly break through the Yuanying realm and open up the space channel of Daluotian. And looking at the posture, the evil Yuanying may have sacrificed tens of thousands of Haoan sect disciples with blood to summon a great demon equivalent to the Yuanying cultivation level. It's better to escape quickly, because a large number of evil demons from outside the domain will continue to kill through this space channel. Thinking of this, Su Fan's body flashed with blood, and he disappeared from the spot. His figure appeared again, and he had already arrived at a mountain peak in the city. The palace-style pavilion with carved railings and jade at the top of the peak is the location of the long-distance transmission formation of Haoan Immortal City. The pavilions here are all built with extremely precious paulownia wood and whole pieces of bluestone. The patterns carved on the pavilions are faintly shining with spiritual light, and extremely powerful forbidden methods are set up on them. Since the last time the Luotian sect came to the city, the long-distance teleportation array of Haoan Immortal City has been in a closed state. Now if you want to leave Haoan Immortal City, this place of trouble, of course, the fastest way is to take the long-distance teleportation array. Although the long-distance teleportation array is heavily guarded, Su Fan can no longer care about so much. At worst, he will just kill his way in. Su Fan's body flashed with blood, and he had already arrived under the palace pavilion. At this moment, several disciples of the Haoan sect who were guarding here were looking up at the vast starry sky above their heads in amazement, and they didn't notice Su Fan's arrival at all. It was not until Su Fan walked up the steps that a disciple of the Haoan sect saw him. "Stop, you!" But before he could finish, his eyes went black and he collapsed to the ground. Su Fan stepped over several disciples of Haoan sect and was about to enter the palace when he saw a dazzling light whistling from the huge peak in the distance. Fuck. He didn't even think about it. A flash of blood appeared on his body and he disappeared from the palace. As soon as Su Fan disappeared, the light shot over. Boom. With a loud noise that shook the earth, the palace on the mountain peak had turned into a pile of ruins. Su Fan, who had escaped several miles away through blood escape, looked at all this with horror. This is the end of the matter. The long-distance transmission formation of Haoan Immortal City no longer exists. There are only 2 long-distance transmission formations in this marginal area in the northeast of Central Plains, one in Haoan Immortal City and the other in the mountain gate of Haoan sect. The formation in the city has been destroyed, and there has been an accident at the mountain gate of Haoan sect. It is unknown whether it still exists. By the way, I wonder how Li Maiaksu is doing now. Su Fan took off the jade talisman from his waist and tried to send her a message. Su Fan, the sect is finished, all destroyed, woo woo. Hearing Li Maiaxu's voice, Su Fan was relieved. Don't cry, what happened? I don't know anything. I'm in seclusion in the underground cave. When I come out, everyone in the sect is dead. Woo woo, don't cry, leave the sect quickly, wait for me at the airport outside Haoidon Immortal City, woo woo. The mountain gate has become a place of no spirits, talismans and magic tools are useless, I can't get out, then run out of the place of no spirits quickly, oh. Su Fan, if I leave, what will happen to Master and my family? Su Fan was almost angry to death. It was already this late, and he still had time to care about them. Take care of yourself first, they may have already run down the mountain. Oh, I'll go down the mountain and meet up with them. Su Fan smiled bitterly, it's really a fool's luck, he can survive like this. I want to ask you something. Do you have any giant perfection cultivators in Haoidon sect? Li Maiaxu was desperately running down the mountain, and she was out of breath when she spoke. Yes, the great elder, is the giant in great perfection. He is not going to die soon. After hearing what Li Maiaxu said, Su Fan couldn't help but take a deep breath. His guess was right. No wonder the Yuanying heavenly phase was complete, but there were only 3 thunder tribulations. It seemed that the bottleneck was broken through by using evil methods. Although it was a fake, it was also the Yuanying realm. Not to mention anything else, breaking through the Yuanying realm, the lifespan alone can increase by more than 1,000 years. For the giant imperfection cultivators who have stopped practicing or are about to die, who can resist such temptation? Not to mention destroying Haoidon sect, even if it means destroying the entire central plains, they will not hesitate. Run quickly, no matter who you meet, don't stop. Su Fan was afraid that Li Maiaxu would have a heart attack, but he also knew that what he said would not work for Li Maiaxu at all. With Li Maiaxu's personality, how could she ignore an injured fellow disciple? No matter what, life and death are determined by fate. At this time, whether he can survive depends entirely on God's arrangement. The only plan now is to find a flying boat outside the city as soon as possible to leave this place, and the farther the better. Thinking of this, Su Fan just wanted to activate the blood escape technique, but he felt a buzzing in his head, and his whole body seemed to be suppressed. Boom. At this time, accompanied by a series of thunderous noises, an unprecedented terrifying momentum suddenly broke out. In the vast starry sky, a huge vortex appeared, like the eye of a storm of an endless tsunami, bursting out with a powerful momentum like a tsunami, crushing over layer by layer. At this moment, Su Fan only felt an incomparable great terror, overwhelming him. The devil's flames were surging and boundless. Su Fan felt like a lone boat in a storm, ready to be swept away by this earth-shaking tsunami at any time. Buzz! As a series of piercing buzzing sounds sounded, a series of light shields like the sky curtains descended from the sky, covering the distant mountain range and the entire Haoidon Immortal City. The water like dark blue light curtains slowly flowed, like waves of ripples on a lake. Su Fan endured this terrifying pressure and looked at the Haoidon Immortal City covered by the dark blue light curtain. He couldn't help but sigh. Now even if he wanted to escape, he couldn't. At this time, the huge vortex in the vast starry sky rolled up like a tide, and countless dense black shadows emerged from the vortex. More than a dozen figures rushed into the sky from all over the city and headed straight for the distant Haoidon sect's mountain gate. At this time, the dozen or so giant and cultivators in the city knew very well that they had to destroy the evil magic formation at the Haoidon sect's mountain gate to completely block the passage to the outer space. Although there was an evil Yuanying cultivator sitting there, they could no longer care. If that evil formation is not destroyed, no cultivator in the entire Haoidon Immortal City will survive, and all will be devoured by countless evil demons from outside the domain. Chapter 260. Can you use your brain? As countless evil demons from outside the domain swarmed out of the vortex, Su Fan also got rid of the terrifying pressure. A flash of blood appeared on his body, and he appeared on the street in the city. At this time, it is safer in the dense streets and alleys. The caves on the mountains in the city cannot withstand the sweep of evil demons from outside the domain. Su Fan completely released his consciousness and chose a direction. Lightning flashed under his feet, and he teleported several times in succession to a dense alley. At this time, the monks in the city were completely in chaos, and there were panicked people everywhere. They wailed and screamed, and they were like headless flies. Su Fan stood in a narrow alley and looked up at the sky. At this time, the black spots in the sky that were falling rapidly were slowly getting bigger. He took out a second-level J talisman from his ring, crushed it with a snap, and instantly supported a colorful light shield, covering Su Fan. Su Fan took out the magic sword again, held the hilt tightly with both hands, closed his eyes and leaned against the wall of the alley. At this time, fear and panic are useless. Just do it. With such a big commotion in Haoyan sect, Su Fan didn't believe that those yawning old monsters in Taingan Xianzhuang could still sit still. He didn't need to go out and fight with the evil demons. As long as he could survive before all the cultivators in Haoyan Xianchang died, he would have hope of escaping. Boom! With a loud bang, a foreign evil demon more than 2 meters tall fell down. A building next to Su Fan was smashed down by the huge body of the evil demon, stirring up endless smoke and dust. Ouch! The huge evil demon howled to the sky, and before it finished howling, a sword light flashed. The ferocious body more than 2 meters tall was cut in half by Su Fan's sword. Su Fan put away his magic sword and sank into the alley next to him again, and his consciousness spread to the surroundings. With loud bangs, countless evil demons had already fallen into Haoyan Xiancheng, followed by the screams and cries of the cultivators in the city. What a bunch of cowards! If it were the demon cultivators in the western wasteland, they would have rushed out to fight the evil demons. Even before they died, they would tear off a piece of the evil demon's flesh and blood. At this time, a female cultivator ran into the alley crying, and a sword demon behind her was waving 2 sword arms and chasing her madly. Plop! The panicked female cultivator was tripped all of a sudden, and the sword demon behind her caught up and swung his sword arm to cut down. Plop! The female cultivator closed her eyes as if she had accepted her fate. She only heard the sound of a sword entering her flesh, but she didn't feel any pain for a long time. She slowly opened her eyes and saw that the huge sword demon in front of her had fallen to the ground with its head and body separated. The female cultivator screamed in fear, and just as she screamed, she was picked up from the ground. Su Fan grabbed the female cultivator's neck, pressed her against the wall, and looked at her expressionlessly. The girl was at the 6th level of key training, about 15 or 16 years old, wearing a standard robe of the Haoyan sect. She looked pretty, but at this moment her face was pale, her hair was disheveled, and her eyes were filled with fear. Like an abandoned little animal. Do you want to track all the evil spirits? The little girl shook her head, tears streaming down her face. Su Fan looked at her expressionlessly for a while, then let go of his hand. Ahem, the little girl covered her neck with her hands, coughed hard for a while, then squatted on the ground with a dull face, wiping tears aggrievedly. Su Fan had no time to coax her. The situation in the city was like the end of the world, and she could only rely on herself to survive. He completely released his spiritual sense, and everything within a radius of hundreds of meters was in sight. Su Fan chose a direction, turned into another alley with a magic sword in his hand, and then released his spiritual sense to patrol around. The little girl saw Su Fan leaving, and hurriedly got up and chased after him. As soon as she turned into the alley, her eyes widened. Su Fan slapped the Taiyuan ghost order on his waist, and a ghost came out with a whoosh. Sister Zhen flew around him for a while, and then disappeared in an instant. The little female cultivator was so scared that she quickly covered her mouth and hid behind the corner. She carefully stuck her head out to take a look, and then quickly shrank back. She patted her chest and panted heavily. It was so scary. That person was a demon cultivator. Suddenly, a hideous ghost face appeared in front of her, and she screamed loudly. Are you free? Why are you scaring her? After receiving Su Fan's thoughts, Sister Zhen disappeared into the air unwillingly. The little female cultivator was so scared that she almost rolled her eyes and fainted. She wanted to continue screaming, but found that the demon cultivator was already standing in front of her. She quickly covered her mouth and looked at Su Fan with horror. Emma. This is a cruel demon cultivator. Will he extract my soul and spirit and refine me into a zombie? What if I catch him and use him as a furnace? Fortunately, the demon cultivator did not do anything to her. He just put his index finger to his lips, glared at her as if warning, and then left. She didn't breathe a sigh of relief until Su Fan left. The little female cultivator thought for a moment, got up from the ground and followed him. Su Fan carried the magic sword and walked along the wall, carefully walking through the narrow alley. From time to time, his figure suddenly disappeared from the spot and killed an evil demon. Although countless evil demons poured in from the alien space channel, most of them were low-level evil demons equivalent to the late stage of key training. But even low-level evil demons have very strong bodies, and ordinary human key training cultivators are no match for these evil demons. At this time, the cultivators in the city were forced into a desperate situation, but they gave up and gathered in groups of 3 or 5, taking advantage of their familiarity with the environment in the city to fight the evil demons to the death. Haoin Immortal City was full of battlefields, and the streets were littered with corpses, mostly the corpses of human cultivators. Su Fan got rid of more than a dozen evil demons nearby, and then returned to the original alley. As soon as he turned into the alley, his eyes suddenly focused, and his feet flashed with lightning, and his figure disappeared from the spot. Then he saw a flying evil demon with wings, falling from the sky in an instant. A pair of ferocious giant claws fiercely grabbed the place where Su Fan had just stood, and the nearly 10-foot-high courtyard wall was grabbed and collapsed. The flying evil demon, which failed in the surprise attack, spread its wings and was about to fly up. How could Su Fan miss this opportunity? His figure suddenly appeared beside the evil demon, swung a sword and chopped it down fiercely. With one sword, he chopped off the head of the evil demon, and the ferocious head fell to the ground, rolling to the feet of the little female cultivator, frightening her to sit on the ground. Su Fan did not stay here any longer, but fled to another alley, then turned over and jumped into a courtyard. He leaned against the courtyard wall and looked up at the dense flying evil demons in the sky. Originally, Su Fan wanted to get a flying boat outside the city to escape from here, but now it seems that it is definitely not possible. He really didn't expect that the foreign evil demons actually had an air force. At this time, Su Fan heard a sound. He raised his head suddenly, and almost laughed. He saw the little girl climbing over from outside with difficulty, lying on the wall of the courtyard, looking at the ground in fear, and then jumped down with a hard heart, and fell down. Su Fan covered his face. "You are a cultivator. Is it necessary to climb a wall like this? Don't you even know how to use the light body technique?" Su Fan picked her up and pressed her under the wall of the courtyard, then pointed at the flying evil demon soaring in the sky. The little girl leaned against the wall of the courtyard, rubbing her butt with a grin, secretly looking at Su Fan. This demon cultivator doesn't seem to be so cruel. Just when she was thinking about it, she suddenly felt that she was picked up by someone. The little girl only felt a whoosh and she had entered a room, and then was thrown to the ground, and she almost fainted from the fall. Su Fan stood at the door and looked up at the sky, then turned his head and looked at the little girl coldly. "From now on, you stay here and don't run around. Do you understand me?" The little female cultivator shook her head and said pitifully, "Don't leave me, okay?" Su Fan angrily scolded, "Grow your brains, okay?" Chapter 261, All Below the Nascent Soul Stage are ants. Su Fan was speechless, so he simply ignored the little female cultivator. He looked up at the huge vortex in the sky. All the demons that came out of the alien space channel just now were low-level demons. That nascent soul evil cultivator made such a big fuss and even destroyed the entire Haoin sect. It would definitely not be limited to this. The great demon equivalent to the golden core realm, or even the great demon equivalent to the nascent soul realm, would descend into this world through the space channel. Su Fan thought about it, took off the Jade talisman from his waist, and sent a message to Limayaxu. "Su Fan, I have escaped from the absolute spirit land, and am walking down the mountain with several sect disciples." After hearing what Limayaxu said, Su Fan finally breathed a sigh of relief. The space channel of the alien Dalo heaven has been opened. There may be a nascent soul great demon descending in a while. Find a place to hide after you go down the mountain. I haven't found my master and my family yet, Su Fan sighed. Where can you find them? They are probably all used as nutrients for the blood sacrifice of the alien space channel. At this time, they must have all hidden. Oh, I'll find a place to hide later. Limayaxa might have been frightened and lost her composure for a moment. Su Fan put away the Jade talisman and looked up at the vast starry sky again. At this time, the huge vortex was slowly rotating, as if it was brewing something, as if there was an extremely terrifying aura hidden in it. Boom. At this time, another dull loud noise came, and the entire world and the void trembled. He focused his eyes and found that countless black spots were whistling out of the vortex. Then, something like a tentacle stretched out from the vortex, slowly revealing its huge body, which made Su Fan suddenly feel an unprecedented palpitation. Whoa! With a shocking howl, An indescribable destructive aura spread all over the sky. Su Fan only felt a buzzing in his head, his eyes went black, and he almost lost his mind. The little female cultivator next to him was even worse. She held her head with both hands and collapsed to the ground. Su Fan bit his tongue hard and finally regained consciousness. Is this the great heavenly demon equivalent to the nascent soul realm? At this moment, the huge body has emerged from the vortex in its entirety. The whole body seems to be a huge sphere, with countless tentacles dancing slowly. Isn't it just a coronavirus? Su Fan's mouth was bitter. The great heavenly demon has already arrived, but why haven't those old guys in the central plains shown up yet? Not to mention that they are on their way, because the nascent soul can tear through the void and cross hundreds of thousands of miles in an instant. Su Fan was once thrown from the western wilderness to the edge of the northeastern part of the central plains in the blink of an eye. But the great heavenly demon from the foreign land has already appeared, but the old nascent soul monsters of the central plains Xianzhuang have not yet appeared. Are they just sitting back and watching? This is really a mess. Facing a foreign demon with the strength of the nascent soul realm, he could turn the entire Haoaden immortal city into dust with just a breath. Boom. A loud noise from nearby woke Su Fan up from his shock. A huge demon fell down from a few dozen feet away. It was several feet tall. With a huge head, and its hands, legs and body were covered with hideous huge bone spurs, exuding an endless breath of death. Bone-piercing demon. This is a medium-level demon equivalent to the Foundation Establishment realm, and its strength is very strong. The bone-piercing demon waved a pair of forelimbs covered with bone spurs, and with a fierce swing, it swept several buildings in front of it into ruins. Su Fan sighed weakly, and a sense of powerlessness rose in his heart, and he couldn't even raise his fighting spirit. At this time, a huge momentum rolled in from afar, silently covering the entire world, with an indescribable mysterious artistic conception. Su Fan let out a long breath, and tears of excitement were about to flow down. The Yuanying old monster of the Xianzhuang finally showed up. At this moment, the space seemed to open a transparent door, and an invisible big hand followed, crossing the boundary in an instant. The invisible big hand seemed to fly from the sky through the void. Everything was like an antelope hanging horns, and the palm of the hand extended and expanded infinitely, as if encompassing the entire world. The whole world seemed to be frozen at this moment. Boom. With a huge earth-shaking sound, the entire Haoaden Xianchang trembled. The dark blue light cover that covered an area of nearly 100 miles, like a sky curtain, was also smashed by the big hand. Su Fan was also shocked and collapsed to the ground. He felt dizzy, his ears were roaring, and his 7 orifices were shaken to bleed. Not only him, but all the cultivators and demons in the entire Haoaden Xianchang were lying on the ground. Even the nearby piercing demon that had just fallen down trembled and crawled down its huge body, not daring to move at all. Su Fan struggled to get up, and his heart could not help but be very excited. The vast starry sky above Haoaden Immortal City had been shattered, revealing a clear sky that originally belonged to this world, with no clouds. In the direction of the mountain gate of Haoaden Sect in the distance, the giant peak had disappeared, as if it had been wiped out by the Yuanying Great Power. The huge vortex in the sky also disappeared, leaving only the coronavirus-like foreign demon floating in the sky. At this time, another invisible divine thought pressure descended from the sky, accompanied by an extremely majestic momentum, and roared towards the foreign demon. Not only that, from all directions in the distance, several extremely powerful divine thoughts also came suddenly, locking the great demon tightly. Su Fan seemed to understand something all of a sudden. The Yuanying old monsters of Xiangyan and Xianzhuang have been paying attention to the situation here for a long time. They may have been sitting on a small bench, cracking melon seeds and watching the show, waiting for this Yuanying great heavenly demon to come. As for the destruction of Haoaden Sect and the arrival of low-level evil demons, they didn't care at all. Thinking of this, Su Fan couldn't help but smile bitterly. In the minds of those Yuanying old monsters, the lives of low-level cultivators are no different from weeds. Wua! The foreign great heavenly demon kept waving dense tentacles and roared in great anger. The sound was like a heavy hammer, hitting Su Fan's heart hard. Puff! Su Fan spat out a mouthful of blood, feeling that all the strength in his body had been drained out. If he was hit like this again, his internal organs would be shattered. Fortunately, the foreign great heavenly demon did not howl again, but swung his body and disappeared from the air in an instant, and several powerful divine thoughts disappeared with it. Those powerful beings finally disappeared from the sky of Haoitun Immortal City. Su Fan seemed to have unloaded an extremely heavy burden, and he relaxed all of a sudden. The little female cultivator who was lying on the ground beside him also woke up faintly, looking around with blurred eyes. She saw Su Fan, subconsciously crossed her arms and looked at him with a wary face. Su Fan couldn't help but sneer, "You want to be a man without a chest, and a butt without a butt. I must be so hungry and thirsty to have the idea of taking advantage of you." Awoo. At this time, the evil demon that landed nearby roared wildly to the sky. Those powerful beings left, and this guy also became energetic. Su Fan secretly complained in his heart that those yuaning old monsters of Zhangin and Xianzong didn't even say to help them clean up these foreign evil demons before leaving. Millions of cultivators in Haoitun Immortal City, facing countless foreign evil demons. I don't know how many people can survive in the end. In the eyes of these guys, everyone below the yuaning is an ant. Chapter 262 Let everything be as it happens. At this time, the dark blue light shield that enveloped Haoitun Immortal City, like a sky curtain, had been completely shattered. This meant that as long as they left Haoitun Immortal City, they could escape the pursuit of these foreign evil demons. The monks in the city had been extremely pessimistic and desperate, but now they saw a glimmer of hope for survival. This also stimulated their strong instinct for survival. Everyone's eyes turned red, and they began to rush out of the city frantically. The monks with higher cultivation were lucky, as they had several methods to use. Some people activated the relocation talisman, some performed the escape technique, and some relied on their unique secret techniques to successfully escape from Haoitun Immortal City. But most of the low-level key training monks were miserable. They were chased and killed by countless evil demons, especially near the city gate, which was full of broken corpses of monks. Many people drove magic tools to try to rush out of Haoitun Immortal City, but the flying evil demons that had been soaring in the air began to whistle down one after another. Countless monks died under the claws of the flying evil demons. Some were even more miserable. They were torn into two pieces by two evil demons in the air, and pieces of scarlet blood rain were sprinkled. Boom. Boom. At this time, the several-foot-tall thorny demon nearby was waving its huge forelimbs covered with bone spurs, venting its violent emotions crazily. The buildings around him were destroyed into pieces of ruins by it like paper. Many monks hiding inside were also buried in the ruins. The few who escaped by chance did not escape the attack of the thorny demon and were torn into pieces by it. Su Fan glanced at the shivering little female cultivator squatting there, and then walked out of the house with a hard heart. He came to the yard, looked at the crazy thorny demon in the distance again, thought about it, and went back to the house, picking up the little female cultivator. Su Fan came to the yard, and a flash of blood flashed on his body, and he disappeared instantly. Because he brought a burden, Su Fan performed blood escape twice in succession before escaping from Haoitun Immortal City. Su Fan found a deserted place outside the city and threw the little female cultivator on the ground. Although he didn't care about the lives of the cultivators in the city, he really couldn't do such a thing as letting Su Fan abandon the little female cultivator beside him. But that was all. People always have to learn to grow up. I hope that after experiencing such a disaster, the little female cultivator can grow up positively. Life and death are determined by fate. If you want to survive, it depends on your luck. Next, Su Fan took out the King Mu Yufang shuttle from the ring, and then drove the magic weapon away, and disappeared in an instant. Ah! Wait for me, don't leave me, the little female cultivator cried and chased after him, but she tripped and fell to the ground after running a few steps. She lay on the ground, wiped her tears, and looked at the direction where Su Fan left with a blank face, staring blankly for a long time. After a long time, a trace of determination appeared in the eyes of the little female cultivator. She took out a boat-shaped magic weapon and threw it into the air. The boat grew against the wind and turned into a nearly 10-foot-long flying boat. The young female cultivator turned around and looked at the direction of the mountain gate in the distance. The huge peak behind her had disappeared. That was where she had lived since she was a child, but now the sect no longer existed. Thinking of the past, the young female cultivator's heart seemed to be torn apart, and she couldn't help but burst into tears. She wiped her eyes, took a deep breath, and then jumped onto the flying boat. Just as she was about to drive the magic weapon away, the communication talisman on her waist vibrated. The young female cultivator picked it up and looked at it, and was immediately excited. Master, because he was worried about Li Maiaxu's safety, Su Fan did not leave immediately, but found a safe place to land on the ground. He took off the communication jade talisman from his waist and sent her a message. "Where are you, Su Fan? I'm with my master. He was seriously injured. Many people in my family died, and many brothers in the sect couldn't be contacted." Woo woo. After listening to Li Maiaxu's crying, Su Fan was also quite surprised. He didn't expect that her master actually survived. "I'm relieved that you're okay. Where are you going next, Su Fan? Haoyun sect is destroyed. Master and two uncles are looking for surviving disciples in the sect, and then they are going to take us to the central region." She was in a very low mood, and there was a trace of sadness in her words. Su Fan didn't know how to comfort her. For a disciple of the immortal sect like Li Maiaxu, this experience was definitely unforgettable. "I'm relieved that you can reunite with the people of the master sect, Su Fan. You come too, and go to the central region with us. Master used to be a disciple of the Taeksu immortal sect, and he wants to lead us there." Su Fan smiled bitterly, but forget it. He had heard of the Taeksu immortal sect, which was a super sect in the Central Plains. He was a person born in the demon sect, and he was also an evil cultivator. He would definitely be exposed there. "Forget it, I'm going to find that sword cultivator senior." "Oh, then will you come to the Taeksu immortal sect to see me in the future?" Li Maiaxu was obviously a little disappointed, and there was a strong reluctance in her words. "I will. After I build my foundation and become a true swordsman, I will go to Taeksu immortal sect to see you when I have the chance to go to the central region." Su Fan knew that they would never see each other again. But he didn't want to make Li Maiaxu sad, so he could only say this, at least to give her a thought. "Then it's a deal, you must come to see me." The two chatted for a while, and Su Fan put away the jade talisman, and then took a deep breath. To be honest, he also felt a little disappointed. He shook his head quickly to get rid of his thoughts. "Don't force it, just let it go." Su Fan owed Li Maiaxu a lot of favors in the past 2 years in Haoyun Immortal City, so he could only wait until they meet again in the future. Thinking of this, he took out the flying magic weapon King Mu Yufang shuttle from his ring and threw it gently into the air. The magic weapon, which was originally about 1 foot long, instantly turned into a shuttle-shaped flying boat with pointed ends, nearly 10 feet in size, quietly floating in the air. He jumped up and boarded the King Mu Yufang shuttle, then activated the magic weapon and whizzed away instantly. Su Fan sat cross-legged on it, enjoying the feeling of this magic weapon soaring in the air at high speed, and his mood was extremely comfortable. This is a flying magic weapon. Compared with his original Yinfeng boat, not only is the speed increased by nearly 50%, but it also consumes less spiritual stones. A medium-grade spiritual stone is inserted into the card slot of the magic weapon, and it can fly a long distance. Not only that, the King Mu Yufang shuttle can also form a windshield, which can not only block the oncoming whistling wind for him, but also has a hint of wind artistic conception, greatly avoiding the resistance from the wind. It is really a good and exquisite flying magic weapon. Su Fan took out a jade slip from the ring and placed it on his forehead. After a while, he put down the jade slip and couldn't help sighing. This jade slip is the most complete map of the Central Plains, which he got from Li Maiaxu. He easily found his location on the map. It takes at least several months to fly to the nearest fairy city. That woman was too cruel. In order to prevent him from meeting her two precious disciples, she actually threw him in this place where rabbits don't shit. This place is an old and desolate area with the thinnest spiritual veins in the Central Plains, and it is very far away from the prosperous central region. Only the mountain range occupied by the Haoyun sect belongs to the second-level spiritual vein, but it has been completely destroyed now. Maybe for many years to come, this area may not even see a giant and cultivator. Su Fan closed his eyes and sat cross-legged on the King Mu Yufang shuttle, constantly thinking about his future direction. "I can't stay in the Central Plains anymore. According to the way Luo Xianjiao is making trouble, it will take more than 10 years without peace. There are not many spiritual veins in the northern border, and the southern barbarians are too far away. The East China Sea is a good place. Although every few decades, the East China Sea will encounter a tide of beasts from the Sea Clan. Then it's over if I don't go to the sea. I stay on land, and no matter how powerful the Sea Clan is, they can't climb up. So I decided to rush to the nearest fairy city as soon as possible, and then take the long-distance transmission formation to the East China Sea." He took out the jade slip and placed it on his forehead, and began to search on the map. Su Fan studied it for a while, and finally determined his next stop, which was Qingyang Fairy City. This book has been on the shelves for 2 months, and Lao Bu did not expect that the big guys would be so awesome. The average subscription of this book has exceeded 540. Here, Lao Bu would like to thank all the book friends for their support and encouragement. Thank you all. Chapter 263. His thoughts are pretty good. In late autumn, the mountains and plains are covered with yellow leaves, the sky is high and the sun is far away, and the earth is slightly bleak. Fengshufang City is named after a maple forest nearby. Every autumn, the maple forest turns red, and it is a large piece, which is very beautiful. Su Fan drove the Qingmu Yufang shuttle and saw the maple forest from a distance, with a smile on his face. He has been flying for more than half a year since he came out of Haoyang Immortal City. According to the map, Fenglinfang City is not far from Qingyang Immortal City. When he got here, even if he entered the Qingyang Mountains, the nearby spiritual veins of all sizes are very dense, and there are many sects and cultivation families. Su Fan was exhausted all the way, and finally he could find a place to rest. When he flew to the maple forest, he landed on the ground and put away his magic weapon, and couldn't help frowning. Su Fan released his spiritual consciousness, but did not feel the breath of the formation in the maple forest. He thought about it, slapped the Taiyin ghost order on his waist, and summoned Sister Zhen to fly into the maple forest to investigate. After a while, Sister Zhen sent a thought. Su Fan couldn't help but sigh. Fenglin Market had been abandoned for a long time. He called Sister Zhen back, took out the map jade slip and looked at it for a while, then drove the magic weapon away. The Qingyang Mountains stretch for tens of thousands of miles, with dozens of large and small spiritual veins, including 3 second-level spiritual veins, occupied by 3 giant sects, and Qingyang Immortal City is jointly managed by 3 immortal sects. In addition to the 3 giant sects, there are more than a dozen small sects and countless cultivation families throughout the Qingyang Mountains. This is basically the case for all the immortal sects in the Central Plains. As long as there are spiritual veins, there will inevitably be many sects and cultivation families. So many sects gathered together and could actually coexist peacefully, which is absolutely unimaginable in the Western wilderness. The demon sect is brutal and aggressive. How could a place with rich spiritual vein resources like this gather so many sects? They would have fought to the death long ago. In the end, the fittest survived, and a demon sect dominated this spiritual vein land. Su Fan drove the magic weapon and continued to fly deep into the Qingyang Mountains. Along the way, he found a deserted small market. It seems that the Luotian sect is also very noisy here. In desperation, Su Fan had to drive the magic weapon to continue moving forward. When he flew over a dense forest, he saw several monks in the distance driving magic weapons and rushing over. Su Fan did not dodge, but floated in the air, waiting for them to come. They were just a few key refining cultivators, and he didn't take them seriously at all, and he also wanted to understand the situation nearby. Soon, several cultivators flew over and looked at him with vigilance. These people were wearing uniform standard robes, and they were obviously disciples from a certain immortal sect. Su Fan bowed to them and said with a smile, "Fellow Taoists, please stop me. What can I do for you?" A sect disciple who was leading the opposite side looked at him coldly, then took out a jade talisman and swept it at him. Seeing the spiritual light flashing on the jade talisman, the people on the opposite side relaxed their vigilance. "We are the Shuayu sect's law enforcement team. Please show us your identity jade card." Su Fan smiled, took out his identity jade card from his storage bag, and threw it to the other party. The other party took the jade card, took out a miniature magic circle and swept it over it. A light screen popped up, which recorded all kinds of information about Su Fan. Su Fan's identity in the Central Plains is clean and can definitely withstand investigation. The disciple of Shuayu sect threw the identity jade card back and looked at him in disbelief. "You really came from Haoyang Immortal City?" Su Fan understood what the other party meant. "How did you survive?" He smiled and said, "I'm lucky, and I was lucky to save my life. During this period, many cultivators came from there." Su Fan smiled bitterly and didn't respond. A trace of sadness appeared on his face. He was acting very well, and the disciples of Shuayu sect opposite him all had a trace of sympathy in their eyes. "Go south and register your identity at Huxing Market first." Su Fan thanked the other party, and then drove the magic weapon away. After flying for more than half an hour, the figures of monks could finally be seen along the way. The light of magic weapons gathered in one direction from all directions. Su Fan looked up and saw a huge fortress in the distance. This Huxing market is really big. It is estimated that the evil cult is too serious, so the Xianzong moved all the small markets around here. Su Fan landed outside the market. There were several long queues at the gate of the market in front of him. They were all monks who were preparing to enter the market and were being inspected. He found a team to follow and slowly moved forward with a long flow of people. Finally, Su Fan arrived at the gate of the market and passed the security after a careful inspection. Although he passed the security check, he was not a local monk and had to re-register his identity before entering the market. Su Fan came to a room outside the market, came to a counter, and handed over his identity jade card. A disciple of Shuayu sect checked his information and then glanced at him. You have joined the Forbidden Evil Division, and assisted the disciples of the Immortal sect in destroying the base of evil cultivators in Haoyun Immortal City. Listening to the other party's inquiry, Su Fan nodded. Our Shuayu sect is recruiting outer disciples. Your resume is very good. We can give priority to you. Su Fan shook his head quickly. What a joke. When I escaped from Haoyun Immortal City, I was seriously injured. I want to find a place to heal my wounds first. The disciple of Shuayu sect behind the counter nodded very considerately, and then re-registered for him. After registering his identity, Su Fan successfully entered Huxing Market. This place has obviously been rebuilt. There are 9 main streets with 3 horizontal and 3 vertical lines. There are shops on both sides. There are dense pedestrians on the street. It is very lively. Of course, the prices of various cultivation materials are not lower than those in Haoyun Immortal City. Su Fan found an inn. The room price here is also ridiculously expensive. Such an inconspicuous little shabby shop costs 10 spirit stones for one night. He fell asleep as soon as he entered the guest room. Even an Iron Man could not bear to fly for several months without sleep. He slept for 2 days before waking up. Su Fan left the inn refreshed, strolled around the streets of Fangxi, and then found a restaurant and walked in. He found a seat in the hotel lobby, ordered a table of spiritual food and started eating. It was lunchtime, and the hotel lobby was almost full of monks, which seemed very lively. Old Gu, why did you come back from Qingyang Immortal City? There's no way, independent cultivators can't survive there. You used to do well there, that was in the past. If you want to survive in Qingyang Immortal City now, you either have to join the Immortal sect as cannon fodder or be recruited by the Immortal sect. Is the Immortal sect so domineering now? Why don't we just go to the East China Sea? You wishful thinking. I heard that the major immortal cities in the Central Plains have long closed the teleportation formations leading to the East China Sea. Damn it, this is not going to let people live. If you make me angry, I will join the cult too. Brother, be careful with your words, be careful with your words. Su Fan held the chopsticks with a dull face, and he heard clearly the words of the 2 cultivators at the table next to him. What the hell? He has always wanted to find a place in the East China Sea and practice in peace. It seems that his dream is also beautiful. Nowadays, evil cults are rampant in the Central Plains, and there must be many people who want to go to the East China Sea. How could the major immortal sects in the Central Plains let them leave the Central Plains? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 264 Immortal Sect Disciple. After listening to the words of the 2 people at the next table, Su Fan lost all his appetite. Under this background, it is impossible for the independent cultivators in the Central Plains to practice in peace. There are only 2 choices now, either to join the Immortal Sect or accept forced conscription, or to join the cult. But these 2 choices are unacceptable to Su Fan. If it really doesn't work, just find an uninhabited place in the Qingyang Mountains to hide for a few years, and wait for the Immortal Sect to wipe out the cult before coming out. But he thought about it, this method still doesn't work. Wherever there are spiritual veins, they are occupied by the Immortal Sect and the cultivation families. It would be okay to find a place with thin spiritual energy, but then what's the point of practicing? Su Fan sighed. Independent cultivators really have no human rights. He put down his chopsticks, picked up the wine glass and took a sip, and continued to listen to the conversation of the cultivator next to him. Old Gu, then you are going to stay in Huxing Market when you come back this time. I mainly want to see you this time. I will go to Shu Ayuman in a few days. It is said that they are recruiting talisman masters. I want to try, although Shu Ayuman is a little small, it is also a good place to go at this time. Do you know why Shu Ayuman recruits talisman masters? It's because the three major immortal sects are too oppressive, and these small families can't bear it. Hearing this, Su Fan's heart moved. If he can really join Shu Ayuman as a talisman master, it seems not bad. Although his talisman making skills are average, it should be no problem in such a small family. And as a talisman master, at least he doesn't have to go out to fight. Thinking of this, Su Fan lost the desire to eat, paid a bill and left the hotel. Shu Ayuman is not far away, so he went out early the next morning. He flew for more than 2 hours with a magic weapon and arrived at Shuayu Market at noon. There are some buildings dotted in the distant mountains, which seem to be hidden and invisible. Shuaifang Market is in a valley surrounded by mountains. The steep peaks not far away are the gates of Shu Ayuman. Su Fan came to the outside of the valley. The security here was strict. He waited in line for half a day before he accepted the security check and entered the market. Shuaifang is not small. The whole valley is packed with narrow streets. There are houses and caves on the mountains around the valley. Su Fan asked around and easily found the place where Shu Ayuman recruited talisman masters. This is an extraordinary pavilion. It was noon, but many casual cultivators had come here. They gathered here in groups of 3 or 5, waiting for the assessment of Shu Ayuman. After a while, several disciples of Shu Ayuman came out of the pavilion. All the talisman masters who are going to take the test, please line up here. Following the call of the Shuayu sect disciples, many of the independent talisman masters who came to take the test quickly lined up in a long queue. Su Fan also lined up with the crowd, and the process of waiting for the test was very long. After waiting for an hour, it was Su Fan's turn. He was led into the pavilion by a Shuayu sect disciple. Compared with the grand exterior, the decoration inside the pavilion was much more delicate and exquisite. The screens, tables and chairs in the hall were all carved with complex and exquisite patterns. The hall was not too big, but it was more than enough to accommodate 100 people. There were tables inside. Su Fan found a table and just sat down. A Shuayu sect disciple began to read out the rules of the test. The rules of the test were very simple. As long as you use the 5 talisman papers on the table to draw 2 exorcism talismans, you will pass. After hearing the rules of the test, the faces of most independent talisman masters changed immediately. Isn't this embarrassing? Exorcism talisman belongs to the middle grade talisman, which is still very difficult for ordinary casual talisman masters. When Su Fan just learned the art of making talismans, he only spent some low-grade talismans, but he never mastered the middle-grade talismans like exorcism talisman. Although he was able to skillfully make exorcism talisman through the game panel later, the power of the talisman was average, and it always lacked a bit of charm. It was not until he got Li Myoxa's Jade Slip in Haoitun Immortal City that Su Fan's talisman making level broke through the bottleneck and improved qualitatively. Su Fan spread out a piece of talisman paper, closed his eyes slightly, and went through the whole process of making exorcism talisman carefully from beginning to end in his mind. After a while, he took out his top-grade talisman pen, dipped it half full of talisman ink, and then calmed down and concentrated his mind to start making talismans. Su Fan looked focused, and his pen flew, and the slender and graceful crimson arc spread on the talisman paper, like flowing clouds and water, comfortable and natural. He was completely immersed in a state of mysterious tranquility, with only the thin and dense lines on the talisman paper in his eyes. When a complex and mysterious pattern quietly bloomed on the talisman paper, the surface of the talisman paper suddenly lit up, as if breathing in and out, and then restored to its original state. Huh? Su Fan put down the talisman pen, and the first exorcism talisman had been successfully drawn. In fact, he could have drawn 3 in a row, but of course he couldn't do that in this place. After a short rest, Su Fan began to write talismans again. He controlled the talisman pen in his hand, and drew and wiped on the talisman paper at an amazing frequency. His movements were skillful and smooth, not only without a sense of stagnation, but also with a light and coordinated rhythm. After successfully making 2 exorcism talismans, Su Fan began to let it go, and the next 2 consecutive times all failed. Su Fan showed disappointment on his face, and then pretended to close his eyes and rest. After a long rest, he picked up the talisman pen again. With a focused expression, A thin piece of light green pine grain talisman paper gradually formed a dense and delicate pattern under the sway of Su Fan's talisman pen. Success. Su Fan showed a hint of surprise on his face and let out a long breath. A disciple of Shuayu sect came over and picked up the 3 exorcism talismans on his table. Devours, please follow me. Su Fan followed the other party to a room behind the hall, where an elderly monk of the 9th level of key training sat. The disciple put the 3 talismans drawn by Su Fan on the table, then turned and left. The elderly monk glanced at Su Fan, then picked up an exorcism talisman and examined it carefully. Huh? The other party only took a glance and showed a look of doubt in his eyes. He put down the exorcism talisman and looked at Su Fan with a curious look on his face. Your method of making talismans is not unconventional, but you got some advice from a master? Su Fan nodded and said, I was taught by a senior before, and I learned a little. The old monk chuckled and said, you don't have to be modest, your talisman has already begun to take shape, it's rare. After he finished speaking, he stretched out his hand and said, Identity J Talisman. Su Fan hurriedly handed over the Identity J Talisman, and the old monk took it and drew a line on the micro-talisman array. He looked at Su Fan's information and nodded with satisfaction. Recruiting you casual cultivators was originally just for emergency response. You have a good resume, and your level of talisman art is also considered to be in the door. Today I will make an exception and let you join the sect's talisman hall. Su Fan was stunned. He didn't expect to join the sect so soon. It's not impossible. At least I have a place to stay for the time being. Let's wait and see. He pretended to be surprised and bowed his hands, and said respectfully, Thank you for your help. The old monk waved his hands and asked with a smile, How did you survive the disaster of Haoan sect? Su Fan shook his head and said bitterly, It's hard to explain. The old monk smiled, showing a hint of understanding on his face. My name is Jeyun Teo, and I am in charge of the Fudang of Shuayu sect. When you enter the mountain gate, we will be fellow disciples. Don't be so polite. At this point, he called the disciples outside the house and explained. Su Fan thanked the old monk, and then followed a young disciple out of the pavilion and came to the street of Fangshi. The other party looked at Su Fan and seemed to be very interested in him. Are you from Haoan Immortal City? After listening to the young disciple's words, Su Fan nodded. The other party laughed and said, The sect has accepted many cultivators from there recently. Su Fan finally understood what was going on. No wonder he joined Shuayu sect so easily. No matter how bad Haoan sect was, it was still a giant sect. The cultivators who could escape from Haoan Immortal City must have some skills. These people might not be very impressive in Qingyang Immortal City, but in the eyes of a small sect like Shuayu sect, they were all talents. Shuayu sect was just picking up leaks. Su Fan followed a disciple out of Shuayu market and drove the magic weapon to the mountain gate of Shuayu sect. After all, it was a small sect, so Su Fan's entry process was very simple. He received the identity jade card and a storage bag of Shuayu sect in the sect hall, and chose a cave in the sect, and then became a disciple of Shuayu sect. Su Fan stood in his cave, smiled bitterly and shook his head. From then on, my buddy was a disciple of the Immortal Sect. Chapter 265, Shuayan Sect's Library. Su Fan was not opposed to becoming a disciple of Shuayan Sect without knowing it. Joining such a small sect, there are no troubles in the big sects, and it is not bad to stay here for a few years. Su Fan picked up the jade slip given to him by the sect and placed it on his forehead. After a while, he put down the jade slip and couldn't help but smile bitterly. Shuayan Sect is really a small sect. With only a few thousand people in the whole sect, there are only 5 foundation building monks in the sect, and the one with the highest cultivation is an elder who has reached the great perfection of foundation building and has been in seclusion in the secret place in the back mountain for many years. The qualifications of the disciples of Shuayan sect are quite average. After all, how can they get the chance to be talented seedlings? The disciples with double spiritual roots are already the elite disciples in the sect, and the remaining 3 and 4 spiritual roots are everywhere, just to make up the number. Therefore, in addition to carefully cultivating disciples from an early age, Shuayan sect also constantly absorbs foreign monks to enrich the strength of the sect, which is also the way for many small sects to survive. There is no way, the sect is not deep enough to attract 2 good seedlings. Although the sect is small, it has done well in all aspects after several foundation building elders worked hard to manage it, and the cultivation atmosphere of the disciples in the sect is also very good. How to say it, anyway, Su Fan can feel a positive and upward momentum from the disciples in the sect. As for the fighting power of the disciples in the sect, it is similar to that of other immortal sects, that's all. Shuyan sect has a good inheritance of talisman making. Most of the disciples in the sect choose to practice talisman making. The talisman making aspect is well known in Qingyang Mountains. Therefore, the talisman hall of the sect is considered to be a relatively important place in Shuyan sect. Even many disciples who have been in the sect for many years have no chance to enter the talisman hall. Since breaking through the bottleneck, the talismans drawn by Su Fan have already had a hint of charm. Jay Yunteo has practiced talisman for many years. Of course, he knows what's good, so he decided on the spot to recruit Su Fan into the talisman hall. As for those scattered talisman masters that Shuyan sect beckons, they don't have this treatment. They usually can't even enter the mountain gate, and can only make talismans for the sect in Shuyan market. For such a small family, Su Fan did not expect to get anything here, as long as he could have a quiet environment to practice. Thinking of this, Su Fan put away the jade slip and began to look at his cave. Shuyanmen is not large in area, occupying a third-level spiritual vein, and there are only a dozen peaks inside the mountain gate. Except for a few foundation building elders and a few elite disciples, the caves of other disciples in the sect are about the same size. It was the first time for Su Fan to live in such a real cave, a bit like the Shanxi cave in his previous life. It's just that the area inside the cave is larger, and there are more than a dozen rooms such as halls, bedrooms, practice rooms, talisman making rooms and storage rooms. The surface of the cave wall seems to be polished and very smooth, and it is inlaid with moonstones to provide lighting for the cave. There is also a spiritual spring in the practice room for the monks' daily water needs. A small isolation array was arranged outside the cave, and a piece of ground paved with green strips of stone was arranged, and there was also a small spiritual field on the side. The cave was very empty, except for a few stone tables and stone beds. There was not even a piece of furniture. Su Fan took out pieces of furniture from the ring and arranged them in the cave. After a while, the cave was decorated completely. This kind of cave is good in every way, except that it is not suitable for setting up a kitchen. The caves of the immortal sect disciples are usually used for cultivation. When they practice hard, they take the fasting pills to satisfy their hunger. The monks usually eat spiritual rice and meals made from various spiritual materials. Eating too much grains in the secular world will leave some impurities in the monks' bodies, so the monks rarely eat secular food except occasionally to satisfy their cravings. Su Fan doesn't care about these. He is a physical cultivator who needs to eat a lot of food every day. Even if impurities accumulate in the body, he is not afraid. If he is struck by lightning a few more times, the impurities in his body will be washed away. Since there is no way to place a kitchen in the cave, he had no choice but to simply arrange it outside the cave and make a simple kitchen. Su Fan spent most of the day to tidy up the cave. Although the cave is not big, Su Fan is quite satisfied. At least he has a place to live. The next day, Su Fan went to the sect's talisman hall to report and met Jay Yunteo again. Junior brother, I have just joined the sect. Let me tell you about the rules of our talisman hall. As long as you complete the tasks assigned by the sect, there will be nothing else to do. Jay Yunteo said this and took out a jade slip from his ring. Here are two kinds of talismans. Go back and study them. Recently, the task of our talisman hall is to make these two kinds of talismans with all your strength. Su Fan and Jay Yunteo chatted for a while, and then he knew why the sect recruited talisman masters from casual cultivators. It turned out that all the small sects and cultivation families in the Qingyang Mountains had to pay tribute to the three giant sects every year. In the past, it was not bad. Although the tributes were not small every year, they were still within the acceptable range. Since the proliferation of cults, the tributes forced by the three giant sects have been increasing year by year, and the pressure is very severe. Because Shuyan sect is good at making talismans, it has to deliver a large number of various talismans every year. A few months ago, the three major giant sects presented Shuyan sect with a batch of tasks to make a large number of Shenguang talisman and ZZ talisman. These two talismans are used to deal with evil cultivators. They are the latest talismans developed by the talisman masters of several super sects in the Central Plains. Shenguang talisman can distinguish the breath of evil cultivators, and ZZ talisman can find the traces of evil cultivators. Once these two talismans are popularized in the Central Plains, each immortal sect will have a way to restrain evil cultivators. Although these are only two medium-grade talismans, The number is too large, and the talisman hall of Shuayan sect can't handle it for a while. So they can only recruit some talisman masters from the casual cultivators to make these 2 talismans. Su Fan returned to the cave, took out the jade slip from the ring, and placed it on his forehead. After a while, he put the jade slip down. It has to be said that the foundation of the Central Plains Xianzhuang is still very profound. It has developed 2 talismans to restrain evil cultivators so quickly. In the past, the disciples of the Xianzhuang went around to eliminate evil cultivators, often with great momentum, but with little effect. The reason is that these evil cultivators are hidden very deeply. Some are hidden in the mortal kingdom of the secular world, some are hidden among the casual cultivators, and some are even hidden in the mountain gates of various Xianzhuangs. The disciples of the Xianzhuang lack effective methods and cannot distinguish the evil cultivators at all, nor can they find the bases where the evil cultivators are hidden. Once the evil cult is launched, the evil cultivators hidden everywhere will gather in a very short time, and make trouble everywhere in the Central Plains. Su Fan came to the talisman making room and began to study the 2 talismans carefully. The 2 talismans are only of medium quality, and are about the same difficulty as the exorcism talisman. It only took him 2 or 3 days to basically master the production methods of the 2 talismans. In the following days, Su Fan calmed down and began to mass-produce the Shen Guang talisman and the ZZ talisman. At midnight, Chen Zai was writing at his desk in the cave. His movements were smooth and familiar, and he was immersed in a state of complete oblivion. As time passed, the stack of blank talisman paper on the table gradually turned into talismans with intricate and mysterious patterns. Huh? Su Fan put down the talisman pen, rubbed his swollen and painful head, and then sat cross-legged on the futon with his eyes closed to restore his consciousness. With a continuous production of the Divine Light Talisman and the Seeking Evil Talisman, the success rate of the 2 talismans has now reached more than 50%. If the disciples of the sect's talisman hall knew about this success rate, they would have to worship Su Fan. Just now, Su Fan successfully produced 6 Divine Light Talismans in one breath. He was really lucky, but it also consumed most of his spiritual power. In the past half-month, in addition to practicing the fundamental method of Hununguang, he spent most of his time every day on making these 2 talismans. Now he has accumulated a large number of Divine Light Talisman and Seeking Evil Talisman, and has completed several months of sect tasks. In the next few months, Su Fan can arrange his time freely. The next day, Su Fan went to the Talisman Hall, delivered the task of 2 kinds of talismans this month, and then went to the sect's library. Since he joined the Immortal Sect, he must enjoy the various benefits of the sect. The first thing is to go to the library to see if there are any books that he is interested in, as well as the spells and secrets he needs. The mountain gate of Shuaiman is not big, and the library is not far from the Talisman Hall. He walked there in a short while. The library is a huge palace building with a total of 5 floors. Except for the 5th floor, which is closed all year round, the other floors are open to the disciples in the sect, except for the recording of skills and spells, which requires payment of good deeds. Other books and ancient books are free to borrow. Of course, a small family like Shu Ainman does not have many books in the library. The collection of books in the entire library of Shu Ainman is not as many as 1 floor of the Yinluo sect's Dharma Hall. Su Fan walked around the 1st floor, and then went straight to the 4th floor, where he found a storage of books on various categories such as elixirs, talismans, instruments, and formations. He flipped through the books in front of the talisman bookcase. It's true that Shuayan sect has a lot of inheritance about talismans, and many books and jade slips are helpful to Su Fan. He put down an ancient book, then picked up the ancient book next to it and read it carefully. Su Fan only read 2 pages, and his eyes widened, with an incredible look on his face. I didn't expect to see this book here. Chapter 266. This time I found the root. Su Fan took the ancient book in his hand, and looking at the name of the book, he couldn't help but feel a lot of emotion. This book was the Shuayan Fujing that he seized from a casual cultivator in the West Wilderness. And this book was originally passed down from the Shuayan sect, which is part of the sect's many talisman inheritance. It was not until then that Su Fan reacted. No wonder he always felt that the name of Shuayan sect was so familiar. It seems that the Shuayan sect in the Qin state in the West Wilderness and the Shuayan sect in the Central Plains must have 1,000 connections. Su Fan took this Shuayan Fujing and came to the counter of the library, and asked a sect disciple about it. As he expected, The Shuayan sect in the Qin state was founded by a disciple of the Shuayan sect in the West Wilderness many years ago. It is said that the Shuayan sect in the past was also prosperous in the Central Plains. Later, for some unknown reason, the sect encountered a crisis and was almost wiped out. In order to preserve the sect's inheritance, several elite disciples of the sect took part of the sect's inheritance and went to the West Wilderness and the East China Sea. Su Fan shook his head and smiled bitterly. It is true that people always meet each other everywhere in life. There are such coincidences in the world. He entered the way of talismans with the help of this Shuayan talisman scripture. After going around for a while, he finally found his roots. The Shuayan talisman scripture he sees that year only had the first volume. So Su Fan took the second volume of this book and several other ancient books about the way of talismans and left the library. For more than a year, Su Fan lived a very comfortable life in Shuayanmen. Every month, he handed in a batch of Shanguang talismans and Zixi talismans on time, and then there was nothing to do. Except for the time when he handed in the talismans every month, he asked Jie Yuntao some questions about the way of talismans in the talisman hall, and the rest of the time was almost spent in the cave. Su Fan joined Shuayanmen for more than a year and was very low-key. Most people in the sect didn't know he existed. Even several foundation building elders didn't know there was such a person as him. In the early morning, Su Fan sat cross-legged on the futon to practice Yunilingguang. After 9 turns of gongxing, he slowly opened his eyes. Su Fan opened the game panel and found that the data at the realm of the technique was updated again. Realm, key training level 9. 65 out of 100, technique, Yunilingguang, level 1. 96 out of 100. For more than a year, Su Fan practiced Yunilingguang twice a day, morning and evening, without fail. Not only did he take a Xianlu pill every day, but he also used the middle-grade spirit gathering array to try his best to speed up the progress of practice. This finally accumulated more than half of the 9th level of key training. It was not easy, but I finally saw the hope of breaking through the foundation. Of course, such step-by-step, down-to-earth practice can't be compared with the evil method. Fortunately, after so many days of accumulation, Su Fan's Tao heart has almost been perfected and is no longer affected by the evil method. He has been wandering around for these years, and there is no time to rest. Finally, there is a place to stay, so that he can practice with peace of mind. It is estimated that in less than a year, Su Fan should prepare for the foundation. Su Fan stood up from the futon, had a simple breakfast, and then left the cave. He came to the talisman hall and walked into Jie Yuntao's room. Old Jie was sitting there leisurely, holding an ancient book in his hand and reading it with great interest. Seeing Su Fan coming in, he quickly put down the ancient book. "Junior brother is here, please sit down." Su Fan took out a stack of talismans from the storage bag and put it on the table. "This month's tasks are all here." Old Jie poured a cup of spiritual tea for Su Fan, then picked up a divine light talisman and looked at it carefully. "Junior brother, I didn't expect that your talisman making skills have improved so much in the past year or so. Now you have already entered the hall, not bad." Over the past year or so, Su Fan has been studying various talisman books of Shuayanmen every day, and he has indeed benefited a lot. Now his talisman making skills have made great progress and are no longer the same as before. His mastery of the talisman, at least in Shuayanmen, is definitely ranked first. Old Jie has been immersed in the talisman for many years. Although it is difficult for him to make further progress in his cultivation, his level of talisman making is very high. So after hearing his words, Su Fan felt very comfortable. "Old Jie, I'm not as good as you say. I just touched the door of the way of talismans." Jie Yuntao pointed at Su Fan with his finger, and then laughed. "You kid is hiding it very well. If I believe you, I'm a fool." Su Fan laughed loudly, then took out a small bag of spiritual tea from the storage bag and handed it to Jie Yuntao. "This is my collection for many years. I have never been willing to drink it. Today I specially brought it to honor you." Jie Yuntao took it, opened it and smelled it, and his eyes narrowed immediately. "You kid is not kind. You have such good spiritual tea in your hand, why do you think of taking it now? Don't forget it, I'm still reluctant to give it to you." After he said that, he pretended to reach out and grab it, and old Jie quickly put the spiritual tea into the ring. "It's in my hands, and you want to take it back? What good things are you thinking?" Old Jie is a good person. Except for his poor qualifications, he has almost no shortcomings. Over the past year, Su Fan had asked him many questions about the way of talismans. The two of them were both teachers and friends, and they got along very well. Old gent, I have been practicing in the sect, and I don't know the news outside. Is there any news about evil practitioners recently? Jay Yunteo smiled bitterly and shook his head, saying, it's strange, I haven't seen even a shadow of evil practitioners in the past year. Su Fan frowned immediately after hearing this. Something was wrong. According to his understanding of Luotian sect, if they kept making trouble, it would really be nothing. Once they calmed down, it would definitely not be a good thing. But he didn't take it seriously. Anyway, no matter what happened outside, as long as he didn't leave the sect, there should be nothing to worry about. Don't think about anything, just practice quietly and strive to build a foundation as soon as possible. In this damn world nowadays, strength is the foundation, and everything else is nonsense. Su Fan chatted with Jay Yunteo for a while, and then said goodbye to him and prepared to leave, but as soon as he stood up, old Jay called him. Junior brother, in a few days, the sect will have a batch of talismans to be sent to Qingyang Immortal City. I have something to do here, so I'll spare you the trouble. Su Fan thought about it. He had never been to Qingyang Immortal City since he came here. It would be nice to take this opportunity to go there and take a look. But he did not agree immediately, but made a bitter face. Old gent, I am at the most critical time of my cultivation recently, and you have to assign me work. Jay Yunteo glared and said angrily, how dare you say that? It has been more than a year since I entered the sect. Apart from the sect's tasks, what have you done for the Talisman Hall? Su Fan chuckled and felt a little embarrassed by what old Jay said. Since he entered the Talisman Hall of Shuyan sect, he really has done nothing. Apart from completing the sect's tasks every month, he spends almost the rest of his time in the cave to practice hard. It's time to do something for the sect anyway. It's just running errands and he will be back in 2 or 3 days. Okay, I'll take this job. Tell me when you're going. Old Jay rolled his eyes at him and said, go back and prepare. We're leaving the day after tomorrow. I forgot to tell you that there are a few disciples from the sect going to Qingyang Immortal City. You can protect them. Su Fan didn't take it seriously. He turned around, waved his hand, and left the Talisman Hall. 2 days later, Su Fan came to the Talisman Hall early, and Jay Yunteo handed him a storage bag. When you get to Qingyang County, deliver these talismans to the Xianyu sect base in the city. Su Fan nodded, then took the storage bag from the other party. At this time, a dozen boys and girls aged 12 or 13 came from a distance. They came to the door of the Talisman Hall with a lot of noise and chatter. Su Fan frowned immediately. Old Jay didn't mean that he should take these kids to Qingyang Immortal City. He turned around quickly and found that Jay Yunteo had already run away. Old gent, I hate you. At this time, a middle-aged female cultivator came over and looked at Su Fan with a smile. You must be Su Fan from the Talisman Hall, right? Junior brother, thank you for your hard work this time. What else could Su Fan say? He could only nod at the middle-aged female cultivator. The middle-aged female cultivator smiled and said, Junior brother, let's go. Okay, he has already agreed. Is he going to regret it now? Old gent, this guy is really cunning. Shuyan sect is so poor that it doesn't even have a large flying boat, only a few small flying boats that are several meters long. After the middle-aged female cultivator and a dozen boys and girls boarded the boat, it was already very crowded, and there was no place for him at all. Su Fan didn't want to squeeze in the narrow flying boat with a bunch of naughty kids, so he had to drive the Qingmu Yufang shuttle alone and follow the flying boat. He sat cross-legged on the Qingmu Yufang shuttle, watching the naughty kids in the flying boat next to him shouting and making a fuss, and simply closed his eyes, out of sight, out of mind. Anyway, he just needs to send them to Qingyang Fairy City, and then it will have nothing to do with him. He can just bear with it and it will be over. Chapter 267 Qingyang Fairy City. It takes about a day to travel from Shu'aiman to Qingyang Xiancheng. Su Fan and his companions had a very smooth journey and arrived at their destination in the evening. Since this Hongxin sect developed the Shenguangfu and Zixifu, the Xianzhuang monks have finally been able to gain a certain advantage when facing evil cultivators. Over the past year or so, the major Xianzhuangs in the Central Plains have also increased their efforts to suppress evil cults and achieved considerable results. In addition, the monks from the East China Sea and the West Wilderness have entered the Central Plains one after another, and a large number of evil cult strongholds have been destroyed, and many evil cultivators hidden in the Xianzhuang have also been cleared out. All parts of the Central Plains have finally calmed down. Now there has been no trace of evil cultivators near the Qingyang Mountains for a long time. Su Fan is not optimistic about the current situation. The higher the Tao, the higher the devil. Although the Shangguangfu and Zixifu temporarily gave the Xianzhuang monks the ability to restrain evil cultivators, he always felt that the evil cult was not so easy to suppress. After all, the Luotian sect relies on the transmission of the law in dreams, and sooner or later it will come up with a countermeasure. Su Fan sat cross-legged on the Qingmu Yufang shuttle. From a distance, he could see a large city standing on the plain at the foot of the mountain in the distance. The closer he got to the fairy city, the more lights there were in the sky, and all kinds of flying boats of different sizes whizzed by. Now Qingyang Fairy City no longer had the tense atmosphere of the past, and it has regained its former prosperity. A large number of cultivators come here every day. The flying boat of Shu Ainman landed on the airport square outside the city. There were countless flying boats parked here, and the road leading to the fairy city was crowded with people, which was extremely lively. The dozen or so teenagers from Shu Ainman might be coming to Qingyang Fairy City for the first time, and they were so excited. In the past 2 years, the evil cults have been rampant, and these little guys are almost going crazy in the mountain gate. Now they are finally released. This time they came here to participate in an exchange activity organized by the 3 major immortal sects. More than a dozen small sects near the Qingyang Mountains, as well as some cultivation families, sent many young disciples to participate in this event. In the past, such exchange activities would take place several times a year, but since the cult became a commotion, such exchange activities have stopped. Su Fan followed them, and followed the huge flow of people to the huge gate of the Immortal City. Although Qingyang Immortal City is still heavily guarded now, it has been much more relaxed than before. At least it can no longer feel the atmosphere of facing a great enemy. Countless monks waiting to enter the city lined up in several long queues and were inspected at the city gate. At this time, the superiority of the disciples of the Immortal Sect can be seen. Su Fan and others did not have to queue up at all and entered Qingyang Immortal City directly through a special passage. Entering Qingyang Immortal City, they came to a majestic street that was dozens of feet wide. The street was full of monks coming and going. And there were all kinds of luxurious shops on both sides. The planning of the Immortal City was very good, very similar to the mortal kingdom in the secular world. The streets were very wide, and the 9 horizontal and 9 vertical main city roads were prosperous and crowded. After entering the city, Su Fan separated from the middle-aged female cultivator and went to the Xianayu sect station in the city alone. He walked through 2 busy streets and came to a huge square. After all, it was the giant in Xianzhuang. The Xianayu sect's residence in the city was in the palace in the middle of the square. A black Taoist plaque hung on the top of the palace door. The hall was supported by many green giant pillars, and each pillar was engraved with a lifelike green dragon. It was circling and winding, which was extremely spectacular. The roof was magnificent, covered with the golden glazed tiles, and the vermilion carved beams were simple and generous, with flying eaves and corners like a soaring dragon. It was magnificent and magnificent. As soon as Su Fan arrived at the door of the hall, he was stopped by a disciple wearing the standard robe of the Xianayu sect. Stop! Su Fan was stunned. This disciple of the giant in Xianzhuang was really arrogant. He quickly explained his purpose to the other party and handed over his identity jade card. Wait here, the other party said coldly, then turned and walked into the hall. Su Fan shook his head. From the other party's attitude, it can be seen that a small sect like Shuyan sect is nothing in the eyes of these disciples of the big sect. I don't know where these disciples of the big sect get their sense of superiority from. A small disciple in the middle stage of key training dares to order him around. After waiting for a long time, Su Fan was brought into the hall and handed over the talisman to Xianayu sect. Su Fan walked out of the hall, turned around and took a look, and couldn't help but secretly complain in his heart. The 3 major sects in Qingyang Immortal City have squeezed these small sects too much. In order to complete the offerings, Shuyan sect made a large number of talismans every month and handed them over to the 3 major sects, almost exhausting the resources of the sect. This is drinking their blood. After completing the task of the sect, Su Fan went shopping in Qingyang County. He walked around the shops on the street and had to say that the cultivation resources in the Central Plains were indeed too rich. Compared with the Central Plains, the Western Wilderness is just like a rural town. As long as you have spirit stones, you can buy anything in Qingyang Immortal City. Of course, it's expensive, very outrageously expensive. Su Fan came to a main street and walked into a shop called Baikeoksun. Baikeoksun mainly deals in elixirs. It is said that it is the business of a super immortal sect and has branches in all the immortal cities in the Central Plains. After more than a year of hard practice, Su Fan has accumulated more than half of the late stage of key training. The next step is to prepare for foundation building. Although there is no breakthrough bottleneck with the help of the game panel, Su Fan feels that the progress of practice is getting slower and slower. Although the several elixirs in his hand are good, he now takes one elixir every day. No matter how good the elixir is, the effect will definitely get worse and worse if he takes it for a long time. So he wants to try another elixir and strive to practice to the state of great perfection in the late stage of key training as soon as possible. After some choices, Su Fan bought 10 bottles of 9-turn jade liquid pill and 3 bottles of the Wu Pure Yuan pill in Baikeoksun. Both of these elixirs come from the Taiyidan sect, the largest alchemy sect in the Central Plains. Coming out of Baikeoksun, Su Fan's heart was bleeding. These two kinds of elixirs were too damn expensive. Even though he was wealthy, he still felt extremely painful. In order to build his foundation as soon as possible, Su Fan gritted his teeth and paid the spirit stones. After all, cultivation is the foundation. In order to improve the realm, it is worth spending more spirit stones. After buying the elixirs, Su Fan no longer had the mood to continue shopping. Because there were so many good things in Qingyang Xiansheng, he wanted to buy everything he saw. Originally, he thought he had no shortage of spirit stones, but after walking around Qingyang Xiansheng, he realized that he was still fucking poor. Shuaiman also has a station in the city. Although the conditions are a bit worse, the disciples of this sect can live here for free. Su Fan came to the station, asked for a guest room, entered the room and sat cross-legged, and then took out an exquisite jade bottle from the ring. He poured out a pill and stuffed it into his mouth, and then began to practice Yuningguang. Chapter 268. This is a bit against the will of heaven. The pill that Su Fan just took was the 9-turn jade liquid pill that he bought at Baikeo Pavilion today. The pill melted in his mouth, and a strong spiritual energy exploded in Su Fan's body. He felt that all the meridians and internal organs in his body were sore. He quickly kept his mind focused and began to practice Yuningguang. As the technique was practiced over and over again, a mist of steam lingered around Su Fan. Su Fan did not stop until the 9th turn of the technique was completed, and then slowly opened his eyes. The medicinal power of the 9-turn jade liquid pill was too strong. Su Fan felt that a large amount of spiritual energy was still accumulated in his body, and it would take several days to completely absorb it. The huge medicinal power made his meridians sore and swollen. This 9-turn jade liquid pill was at least equivalent to the effect of 10 Xianlu pills, and the spiritual power was also extremely pure. Although the price of the 9-turn jade liquid pill was as high as 3 medium-grade spirit stones, it was definitely worth the money. The pills of Taiyi Danzong are indeed extraordinary. Yuningguang can only be practiced twice a day at most. It takes several days to completely absorb these spiritual energies. After such a long interval, the pure spiritual energy accumulated in the body will definitely dissipate apart. Su Fan's heart moved, and a bold idea suddenly popped up in his mind. I wonder if the method of transforming spiritual power in the evil method blood transformation magic mist can help him completely absorb and transform the spiritual power accumulated in the body. Thinking of this, Su Fan tried to operate the method of transforming spiritual power in blood transformation magic mist. The result was very gratifying. In just a few hours, Su Fan transformed and absorbed all the pure spiritual energy accumulated in various parts of the body. Although these spiritual energies still have to rely on Yuningguang to finally transform into his own mana. But in this way, he can digest a 9-turn jade liquid pill every day in the future, and the progress of practice can be at least increased several times. According to this progress, it only takes 2 or 3 months for him to practice to the state of great perfection of key training. Su Fan never thought that the evil method could be used in this way. This is a bit against the sky. In the next few days, Su Fan hardly left his house, and stayed in the house every day to practice hard. The spiritual energy in Qingyang Immortal City is extremely rich, coupled with the powerful medicinal power of the 9-turn jade liquid pill and the evil method of blood transformation magic mist to transform spiritual energy. In just a few days, the realm data on the game panel has increased a little. This is not a middle stage of key training. During his hard training in the Shuaiman cave, the realm data on the game panel often increased a little. It often took more than 10 days. If he follows this progress, at most 2 months, he can accumulate the late stage of key training to the perfect state. Once he practices to the great perfection of key training, the next step is foundation building. Other cultivators must take foundation building pills to break through the foundation building, and even so, there is a high probability of failure. But for Su Fan, he has the help of the game panel, and there is almost no bottleneck. At noon that day, Su Fan was practicing in the house, using the evil method to absorb and transform the spiritual energy accumulated in his body. At this time, someone knocked on the door outside the house. He opened the door and found that it was the female cultivator who came with him. The middle-aged female cultivator was named Guo Yun. She was at the 9th level of key training and was a cultivator trained by Shuayan sect. She grew up in Shuayan sect due to her aptitude. She failed to break through the foundation building stage several times and had no hope of building a foundation. Now she is the elder who teaches the Dharma in the Dharma Hall of Shuayan sect and is also responsible for the enlightenment and teaching of young disciples. Su Fan certainly did not dare to neglect the other party's visit. He quickly let her in and brewed a pot of spiritual tea for her. Elder Guo, can you return to the sect tomorrow? Su Fan could not wait any longer and just wanted to return to the cave of the sect to continue his hard training and strive to break through the foundation building stage as soon as possible. Guo Yun nodded and said, I came here for this matter. The exchanges between the various sects have ended and we can return to the sect tomorrow morning. Su Fan picked up the teapot and poured her a cup of spiritual tea. How did these little guys from the sect perform in this exchange? Guo Yun picked up the teacup and took a sip, then shook his head with a wry smile. There are no outstanding children among the batch of seedlings in the sect. They can only be ranked in the middle and lower among the dozen sects in this exchange. Su Fan knew in his heart that this was the sadness of small sects and families, and they could not find disciples with great talents. The sect should let the young disciples go out for more experience. Guo Yun sighed and said, there are not many young disciples. How can the sect be willing to let them go? After hearing what the other party said, Su Fan did not want to say anything more. The Zhangyin Xianzong protected its disciples too well. The evil cults were rampant in the Central Plains, and those Xianzong disciples were really hard to describe. Junior brother Su, when I return to the sect tomorrow, I will go to a place on the way. Please help me take care of these children, Su Fan hurriedly said. Senior sister, if you have anything to do, just go and do it. I will help you take care of them. Thank you, junior brother. If you have anything to do in the sect in the future, just come to me. The two chatted for a few more words, and Guo Yun said goodbye and left. While there was still time, Su Fan went to Baikao Pavilion again and bought 60 bottles of 9-turn jade liquid pill in one go, which was enough for him to practice for 2 months. The next morning, Su Fan and Guo Yun left Qingyang Immortal City with more than a dozen young disciples from the sect and set off on the journey back to the sect. When the flying boat was halfway, it began to slowly descend and finally landed on the ground. Su Fan knew that Guo Yun was going to do something, so he drove the Qingmu Yufang shuttle towards the place where the flying boat was parked. The flying boat landed in a valley, surrounded by lush vegetation, green and full of vitality. The valley was surrounded by cliffs that towered into the sky. In the tall mountains, many climbing plants grew, densely covering the mountain walls, which was very lush. Guo Yun came out of the flying boat and bowed to Su. Junior brother, I will be back in half an hour. Senior sister, don't worry, I'm here. Guo Yun thanked Su Fan again, and then drove the magic weapon away. At this time, the teenagers on the flying boat got off the flying boat and started playing in the valley. Su Fan found a place on the side, then sat down cross-legged, patiently waiting for Guo Yun to come back. He looked at the surrounding environment and couldn't help but feel a little confused. Even if Guo Yun was going to do something, why did he land the flying boat in such a remote place? Just now, he looked from the air and saw that the surrounding area was dozens of miles in radius, with high mountains and dense forests, and there were no people at all. Despite this, Su Fan didn't care. Guo Yun should be going to do something more private and didn't want others to know. At this time, more than a dozen teenagers were already having fun in the valley, and some even ran to the bottom of the cliff at the innermost part of the valley. Su Fan shook his head. These naughty kids were too noisy. He didn't want to care about them, but he was afraid that they would encounter some danger. In desperation, Su Fan had to stand up from the ground and wanted to call these people back. As soon as he stood up, his eyes suddenly condensed, and he suddenly raised his head and looked up into the sky. Chapter 269 Let's Ost A. Su Fan raised his head suddenly, and suddenly a thick demonic smoke appeared in the sky, spreading all over the sky, and in an instant, the entire valley was covered. Not good, the domain of the foundation building cultivators. At this moment, Su Fan wanted to use the blood escape to escape from here, but it was too late. At this time, more than a dozen figures suddenly fell from the sky and surrounded Su Fan. Su Fan's face suddenly became solemn. These people were all foundation building cultivators, and the leader was in the late foundation building stage. Then several small flying boats roared out from the surrounding cliffs and landed in the valley one after another. A large number of cultivators swarmed out of the flying boats. There were hundreds of these cultivators, among whom there were more than 20 foundation building cultivators. Su Fan did not act rashly. His nose twitched a few times and he smelled a faint smell of evil cultivators. In the past, when he used the scent smelling technique, let alone so many evil cultivators gathered together, even if there were 3 or 5, the smell would be stronger than it is now. Su Fan's guess was correct. Luo Xianjiao had mastered a new evil method that could evade the detection of the Divine Light Talisman and the Seeking Evil Talisman. At this time, the dozen young disciples of Shu Ainman were obviously frightened. They desperately ran out of the valley, but they were stopped by many evil cultivators after a few steps, and more than a dozen were killed in an instant. Only the 2 youngest disciples were left, who were picked up by the evil cultivators and thrown to Su Fan's side. Facing so many foundation-building evil cultivators, Su Fan was powerless and watched more than a dozen naughty children die in front of him. He forced himself to suppress the anger in his heart and took a deep breath. At this time, Guo Yun drove the magic weapon into the valley. She glanced at the corpses of the young disciples, and a trace of reluctance appeared in her eyes, but then disappeared. She came to Su Fan and looked at Su Fan with a smile. "Junior brother, you are good at making talismans. How about joining my divine religion?" Su Fan smiled bitterly and said, "At this time, do I still have a choice?" Guo Yun laughed, then turned his head and looked at the 2 young disciples of Shuyan sect. Su Fan immediately understood what the other party meant. It was not enough to just talk about joining Luotian sect, but he had to submit a letter of surrender. The 2 disciples of Shuyan sect were only 11 or 12 years old, and in his eyes they were just children. But without thinking, he waved his hand and sacrificed the invisible needle, which instantly pierced through the heads of the 2 teenagers. "Junior brother, welcome to join my divine religion. As long as you sincerely worship Luotian God, I guarantee that you will break through the foundation establishment realm within 2 years. After Guo Yun finished speaking, he turned his head and nodded to the evil cultivator in the late foundation establishment stage, and then boarded the small flying boat of Shuyan sect. The evil cultivator in the late foundation establishment stage, who was in the lead, looked at Su Fan expressionlessly and gave an order to the people around him. "We will take the flying boat first. When we enter Shu Ainman, you will rush in immediately." After he finished speaking, he led a dozen evil foundation building cultivators to board the flying boat of Shu Ainman and row it away. After a while, the other evil cultivators also boarded the flying boat and left the valley one after another. At this time, there was only a small flying boat and a dozen evil cultivators in the valley. The 2 evil foundation building cultivators who led the team looked at Su Fan and waved at him. "Boy, why are you still standing there? Hurry up and get on the flying boat." Su Fan trotted over and bowed to the 2 respectfully. "2 seniors, please take care of me in the future." After hearing his words, the 2 evil foundation building cultivators had no intention of paying attention to him at all, but just looked at him coldly. Su Fan smiled bitterly and walked towards the flying boat. The evil cultivators were not at ease with him, so they deliberately sent 2 evil foundation building cultivators to keep an eye on him. Because Su Fan used the hidden breath technique to suppress his cultivation to the 7th level of key training, the 2 foundation building evil cultivators did not take him too seriously. Seeing Su Fan walking towards the flying boat, the 2 foundation building evil cultivators followed him. They had just taken 2 steps when they suddenly felt an extremely cold breath invading their bodies, and their whole bodies seemed to be frozen stiff. Before they could react, they saw a flash of sword light, and the heads of the 2 foundation building evil cultivators instantly soared into the sky. The dozen or so key training evil cultivators on the flying boat were all dumbfounded. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, They would not have believed that the two foundation-building predecessors died just like that. As a piercing cold wind swept in, the dozen or so evil cultivators all froze in place. Whoosh! Sister Zhen suddenly appeared out of thin air, stretched out her hand and sacrificed the dead bone viper whip, devouring the ghosts of more than a dozen evil cultivators. Su Fan's eyes condensed, and a trace of bloodlight emanated from his body, devouring the flesh and blood of these evil cultivators, leaving a pale white skeleton on the ground. He glanced at the two Shuayan sect disciples on the ground, then sighed, walked over and put them into his ring. Su Fan took off a jade talisman from his waist, and then sent a message to Jie Yuntao. Old Jen, I'm Su Fan, boy, you can return to the sect tonight, you've worked hard this time, let's have a drink when you come back. Old Jen, Guo Yun has joined the Luotian sect. He and a dozen evil foundation-building cultivators took the sect's flying boat and prepared to sneak into the mountain gate. There are hundreds of evil cultivators following behind. What did you say? Hearing this news, Jie Yuntao was stunned. Old Jen, there is a late-stage evil cultivator on Guo Yun's flying boat. They will be able to reach Shuayan sect in less than 2 hours. After Su Fan finished speaking, he cut off the jade talisman, walked directly onto the flying boat, and then drove the flying boat out of the valley. He drove the flying boat, hanging far behind those evil cultivators, following them slowly. 2 hours later, the small flying boat that Guo Yun and others were riding finally arrived at the mountain gate of Shuayan sect. Guo Yun looked at Shuayan sect in the distance and said excitedly, Captain, Shuayan sect is not on guard. And the mountain gate formation is not open. The late-stage foundation-building evil cultivator nodded and said, Everyone, get ready and kill into Shuayan sect. Guo Yun and others hurriedly responded loudly, and then drove the flying boat into the mountain gate of Shuayan sect. As soon as the flying boat entered Shuayan sect, it entered a fog. The late-stage foundation-building cultivator immediately felt something was wrong. No, this is a formation, we are trapped in the formation, he roared, then rushed out of the flying boat and attacked the formation frantically. Guo Yun and others were also confused, and rushed out to attack the formation. But the formation arranged by Shuayan sect was very powerful, and it was impossible to break out of the formation in a short time. The many evil cultivators following behind saw the flying boat driven by Guo Yun successfully rushing into Shuayan sect, and began to speed up and rush over. But at this moment, Shuayan sect's protective formation suddenly opened, blocking several flying boats of Luotian sect outside the mountain gate. Several evil foundation-building cultivators knew something was wrong, and rushed out of the flying boats and began to focus their fire on Shuayan sect's mountain protection formation. Although Shuayan sect is only a small sect, the mountain protection formation is not weak at all, and it is not so easy to break. At this time, Su Fan also followed from behind in a flying boat. Seeing that Shuayan sect's mountain protection formation was opened, he finally felt relieved. It seemed that the sect had already made some arrangements. Su Fan glanced at the flying boats of several evil cultivators in the distance, and then sneered. Since you are here, don't leave, stay. Thinking of this, he rushed over in a small flying boat, and in a blink of an eye he came to the side of an evil cultivator's flying boat. Chapter 270 You did nothing wrong. At this time, the evil cultivators in several flying boats were focused on the mountain protection formation of Shuayan sect, and no one was aware of Su Fan's arrival. Su Fan drove the flying boat and whizzed past a flying boat. The dozens of evil cultivators in the boat all felt their eyes go black, and then they knew nothing. Now Su Fan's spiritual sense is very strong. Not to mention the cultivators in the key refining stage, even the cultivators in the early stage of foundation establishment can hardly withstand his spiritual sense attack. Not to mention the fake cultivators like Luotian sect. In a short while, several flying boats full of evil cultivators were rubbed by him one by one. Several evil cultivators in foundation establishment were fiercely attacking the mountain protection formation of Shuayu sect, and they had no idea what was happening in the several spaceships behind them. Suddenly, a flying sword wrapped in thunder whizzed over. Oh no, it's a sword cultivator. Several evil cultivators in foundation establishment quickly gave up attacking the mountain protection formation and sacrificed the protective magic tools to block themselves. Bang! With a loud bang, the bone shield in front of an evil cultivator was instantly smashed into pieces. This did not reduce the speed of the thunder sword at all, and it pierced through the chest of the evil cultivator in an instant, and fell from the air. The thunder sword that killed a foundation-building evil cultivator drew a beautiful arc in the air, and then rushed towards another foundation-building evil cultivator. It was not until then that several foundation-building evil cultivators discovered Su Fan's existence and began to control their spiritual weapons to attack him frantically. While Su Fan was controlling the Thunder Sword, lightning flashed under his feet. His figure appeared next to a foundation-building evil cultivator, waved his hand, and used the Bone Erosion Yin Wind Scroll to wrap the other person in it, making him lose his ability to resist instantly. Su Fan took the opportunity to teleport to the other side of him and smash the other person's head with a punch. Surround him, don't let him run away. Seeing that Su Fan killed 2 foundation-building evil cultivators in an instant, the other people were all horrified and surrounded him. Su Fan's feet flashed with lightning, and his figure was like a ghost, constantly changing positions. Bone-eroding Yin Wind Scroll, bone-cutting hand, stone-breaking force, mountain-splitting force. While controlling the Thunder Sword, he used all his skills and killed several evil cultivators in a short time. Whoosh! Sister Zhen suddenly appeared in the air, cleaning the battlefield while offering the Dead Bone Viper Whip to devour the ghosts of these evil cultivators. Su Fan stretched out his hands, his eyes condensed, and boundless blood overflowed from his body. He devoured the blood of the evil cultivators in several flying boats, and then a flash of blood flashed on his body, and he disappeared from the air. An hour later, 2 figures rushed over from a distance. The mountain protection formation of Shu Ainman was instantly closed, and the 2 giant cultivators who came from Qingyang Fairy City were welcomed into the mountain gate. After leaving Shu Ainman, Su Fan found a safe place nearby. He set up several formations, and then sat cross-legged on the ground to recover his mana. The reappearance of the evil cultivator also means that the Xianzong was caught off guard again. If it weren't for the information provided by Su Fan, it would be hard to say whether Shu Ainman was there. In fact, the attack planned by the Chill Ocean sect was perfect, and it also brought together 20 to 30 foundation-building cultivators. In addition, with Guo Yun as a guide, they could lead them to unexpectedly kill Shu Ainman. Originally, this perfect plan was at least 99% sure, but who knew that Su Fan was a variable, and it was easily destroyed by this key training cultivator. Guo Yun and a dozen evil cult foundation-building cultivators were trapped in a large formation and were killed by 2 giant cultivators who came later. The target of the evil cult's action this time was not just Shu Ainman. Several small sects and cultivation families near Qingyang Xianchang were all targets of Lu Ocean sect. Lao Zhen. Su Fan ended the call and immediately reported the news to the sect, giving them time to set up the formation. Not only that, Shui Yuman also informed Xianyu sect of Qingyang Xianchang about this matter. Luo Yuan cult spent more than a year to organize this team. As a result, the sneak attacks in several directions all ended in failure, and a large number of evil cultivators were lost. In the afternoon, Su Fan, who was practicing, felt a message J talisman on his waist vibrate. Su Fan took it off and saw that it was a message from Old Jet. Old Jet, how is the sect? Haha. Everything went well. The traitor Guo Yun and more than a dozen evil foundation-building cultivators did not escape. Old Jet was in a very good mood, and his words were full of joy. Thanks to you this time, otherwise the sect would have suffered heavy losses. You should return to the sect as soon as possible. Su Fan thought about it, and then told Old Jet the whole story of being forced by the evil cult to surrender in the valley. It's enough for me to know about this matter. Don't tell anyone else. It's urgent and you did nothing wrong. Hearing Jie Yunteo say this, Su Fan breathed a sigh of relief. Old Jet, I'm a little injured. I'll go back to the sect after I recover. If this matter is not clear, Su Fan will not dare to go back to the sect even if he is beaten to death. Even though Old Jet said so, Su Fan still had no idea in his heart, so he decided to wait a few days before returning to the mountain gate. Thinking of this, Su Fan took out hundreds of corpses of evil cultivators and used the blood-transforming magic mist to devour their blood. Originally, he wanted to practice step by step, but with the return of the evil cult, Su Fan completely lost his patience. It's better to build a foundation as soon as possible. A few days later, Su Fan found a hidden place and was struck by lightning, and his body was rarefied. He continuously cleaned the meridians, purified the blood, and cleaned up the poison accumulated in various parts of the body. After doing all this, he returned to the sect. He did not return to the mountain gate immediately, but went to Shui Unfeng Market first, and then put on the Shura ghost mask to change his body shape and appearance. The current Yunfeng city is heavily guarded, as if facing a great enemy. The atmosphere in the market is also very tense. There are not many people walking on the street, and the business of the shops is also very bleak. He walked into a hotel, found a seat in the lobby, and then ordered a few dishes to eat. While eating, Su Fan listened to the conversations of the monks around him. From the conversations of some monks, he learned that the evil cult that had been silent for more than a year has now revived again. The Ocean sect has found a way to restrain the godlike talisman and the seeking evil talisman, which has also caused the various immortal sects to fall into the previous predicament again. Although the immortal sects have invested a lot of resources, they can't catch the traces of these evil cultivators. In the areas around Qingyang Immortal City, there have been several cases of extermination of the family, and the atmosphere has become more and more tense. Shuaiman is not bad. Not only did they resist the attack of the evil cult, but they also seized several intact medium-sized flying boats, which is considered a big profit. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 271 I Will Refuse It Disrespectfully. Su Fan wandered outside for more than half a month before returning to Shuaiman. After entering the mountain gate, he did not return to the cave residence immediately, but went directly to the Talisman Hall to meet Lao Jie. Jie Yunteo saw Su Fan and stood up quickly. You kid still remembers to come back. It's been so many days, Su Fan chuckled and said, don't mention it. In order to escape, I used secret techniques and almost exhausted my blood and ki. Lao Jie was also very worried after hearing this. After all, it is not easy to recover from blood and ki loss. He quickly took out a jade bottle from his ring and handed it to Su Fan. Here is this bottle of Sansui blood condensation pill. Su Fan took it and took a look. He had heard of this kind of pill. Anyway, it was quite expensive. Old gent, you are really willing to take out this pill? After hearing Su Fan's words, Lao Jie was angry at the time and pretended to snatch the pill back. I only have this one bottle, if you don't want it, forget it. Su Fan hurriedly put the pill into the storage bag. He wanted to give it back after it was in his buddy's hands. What good things are you thinking? Old gent, since you are willing to give it, I will be disrespectful. Jie Yunteo pointed at him, then grabbed him and walked out. Su Fan was a little confused, and said, Old gent, where are you going? The sect leader has specially ordered that when you return to the mountain gate, let me take you to see him. The two came to the main peak hall inside the mountain gate and met Zuo Zongheo, the sect leader of Shuaiman. Zuo Zongheo and the other two foundation building elders met Su Fan together. They commended Su Fan on behalf of the sect, not only rewarding him with a large amount of good deeds, but also rewarding him with a bunch of precious cultivation resources. To be honest, Shuaiman is really good to its disciples. Although Su Fan doesn't like these things, it is definitely a big reward for Shuaiman. If it were an ordinary Kigan cultivator, this amount of valuable cultivation resources would be enough for him to break through to the foundation building stage, and he might even be much richer. Not only that, Su Fan was promoted to the deputy head of the Talisman Hall. For a disciple who has just joined the sect for more than a year, this is definitely a reuse. If it weren't for Su Fan this time, it's hard to say whether Shuaiman would exist. Even if the attack of the evil cultivators was blocked, the sect would definitely suffer heavy losses. In addition, Shuaiman also seized several expensive medium-sized flying boats, which was definitely a huge profit. He made such a great contribution, how could Shuaiman not reward him? Su Fan originally just wanted to stay in Shuaiman for a few years, but who would have thought that he would be promoted by the sect so quickly and become a middle-level cadre in the sect? Of course, although he became the deputy head of the Talisman Hall, he didn't want to be in charge at all. In the next period of time, Su Fan planned to continue to practice hard in the cave, and would never come out until he broke through the foundation building stage. Su Fan and Jie Yunteo returned to the Talisman Hall and asked the other party to close the door. I can see that you don't want to be in charge. From now on, I have to support the Talisman Hall by myself. Su Fan chuckled and said, Old gent, don't you know me? In the future, please bear with me. Jie Yunteo was amused by him and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. This kid is really generous. If someone else was promoted, the sect would also have to show his ability. But this guy didn't have this idea at all, and just wanted to practice hard. Now that you are the deputy hall master, you can't be like before. Not even showing up. Come to the talisman hall when you have nothing to do, old gent. This time I have to retreat for a while to restore my own blood and ki. This time, it's just right to take the excuse of blood and ki deficiency to practice hard for a while. After hearing what Su Fan said, old Jeff frowned. Why, haven't you recovered your blood and ki yet? Then you should go back and do retreat, and wait until you recover your blood and ki, Su Fan said with a bitter face. Old gent, I am lucky to be alive. Jae Yunteo couldn't help but sigh after hearing this. I watched Guo Yun grow up. When she entered Shuyan sect at the age of 7, I explained magic to her in the transmission pavilion. I didn't expect that she, at this point, old Ge's face was full of sighs. This girl has good talent and can work hard, but her luck is not so good. She failed to break through the foundation several times. She is just too strong, Su Fan secretly complained after hearing this. No matter how strong he was, he couldn't betray his own sect as long as he thought of the dozen or so half-grown children in the sect who died in front of him. Su Fan felt very sorry. Moreover, he acted in an emergency at that time, and 2 of them died in his hands, which made him very angry. Anyway, he had made such a great contribution to Shu Einman, so it shouldn't be a big deal to stay in seclusion in the cave for a few years. He chatted with Jae Yunteo for a while, and then returned to the cave. Su Fan sat cross-legged on the futon, then took out a storage ring and smiled bitterly. This storage ring was given to him by the leader of Shu Einman. Maybe he heard that he had been using a storage bag, so he rewarded him with one. How could they know that Su Fan had a lot of these things, and even his ghost slaves had several storage rings? Su Fan picked up the storage ring and scanned it with his spiritual sense. It was filled with various cultivation resources such as elixirs, talismans, and magic tools. The rewards were rich, but he really couldn't use them. By the way, this time the reward also included 2 foundation building pills. Su Fan had a game panel, and he didn't need this thing at all when he broke through the foundation building period. It's better to keep it. After all, it's a kind of intention from the sect. I'll find an opportunity to sell it for spirit stones in the future. Su Fan opened the game panel, and the realm data was updated again. Because he devoured several evil foundation cultivators and a large number of evil key cultivators, even after being cleansed by the thunder of heaven and earth, his realm has increased a lot. Realm, key training level 9. 79-100, Kung Fu, Hununguang, level 1. 97 out of 100. Next, take 9 turn jade liquid pill and Bewu pure yuan pill, and use the method of blood transformation magic mist to absorb and transform spiritual energy. In at most 1 month, he can break through to the state of great perfection of key training. Thinking of this, Su Fan took out a jade bottle from the ring, and then stuffed a 9 turn jade liquid pill into his mouth. And then used the method to absorb and transform the spiritual power in his body. For more than a month, Su Fan practiced hard every day and practiced diligently. After a lot of hard work, Su Fan finally accumulated the mana in his body to the state of great perfection of key training. The next step is to prepare for foundation building. After breaking through to the foundation building stage, he has a little ability to protect himself in Zhonggyun. There is no way, the situation is too urgent. The evil cults in various parts of the Central Plains are now making too much trouble, and judging from the current situation, the Central Plains Immortal Sect will not be able to wipe out the evil cults in a short period of time. This time the evil cult planned such a large action. If it weren't for Su Fan, the variable, the several small sects in the Qingyang Mountains might have disappeared completely. Chapter 272, finally established a foundation. At midnight, the whole world was filled with a sense of tranquility away from the world. Su Fan sat cross-legged in the practice room. He put down an ancient book in his hand and came to the outside of the cave. The cool night breeze blew, sweeping the sound of pine waves in the mountains. The white mountain clouds flowed slightly under the bright moonlight, and the moonlight was green and disappeared from time to time. At this time, Su Fan could clearly feel that the spiritual energy in his body had been stirring. Since practicing to the great perfection of key training, Su Fan has been deliberately suppressing the desire to break through, for fear that his state of mind could not be perfect. For more than a month, Su Fan has not practiced Hununguang, and every day he tries to relax his emotions as much as possible. After so many days of adjustment, it is time to break through. Su Fan turned back to the cave, walked into the practice room, sat cross-legged on the futon, and then took out a stick of Jingshan incense from the ring and lit it. He took a deep breath, took out a Bewu pure yuan pill and stuffed it into his mouth, and then began to practice Yunungong. As the exercises were operated over and over again, a sense of enlightenment suddenly rose from Su Fan's heart. At this moment, the spiritual energy in Su Fan's body seemed to have something more, causing a mysterious change in the spiritual energy. The pure spiritual energy in Su Fan's body began to become more spiritual. A trace of light blue light emanated from his body, and as time passed, the light became brighter and brighter. The bottleneck of Su Fan's foundation building period began to stir at this moment. Boom! A wonderful feeling exploded in his mind, and Su Fan seemed to have stepped into another world. There were also drastic changes in his sea of consciousness, like a huge storm. The spiritual energy around the cave began to roll and surge, and finally formed a vortex with a diameter of nearly 10 feet above the cave, which was still expanding. More and more spiritual energy continued to pour into the spiritual energy vortex, and these spiritual energy vortices continued to grow, absorbing the restless spiritual energy of the surrounding heaven and earth. The spiritual energy outside poured into the cave frantically, and Su Fan seemed to hear a light click sound, as if a layer of diaphragm had been pierced. Huningong +1 buzz. With a buzzing sound, it cleansed the mind like a morning bell, and all kinds of inexplicable mysteries lingered in his mind. Su Fan seemed to have comprehended a trace of the Taorim of the rules of heaven and earth. Boom! A huge spiritual force surged into the ancestral orifice between the eyebrows like a tide, and Su Fan's purple palace expanded by nearly twice its size. At this moment, the endless spiritual energy of heaven and earth was like a vast ocean, pouring into his body continuously, and finally gathered in the danshan, stretching the danshan at once. The veins in the body were expanded inch by inch, and the danshan was also expanding continuously until it doubled in size. Su Fan's soul escaped into the realm of emptiness and seemed to fall into a state of emptiness. I don't know how long it took before Su Fan slowly opened his eyes, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. Finally, the foundation has been established. It's not easy. I finally broke through. The foundation building stage and the key refining stage are two completely different states. The danshan has expanded by more than 2 times. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth in his body was originally like gas, but now the spiritual energy in his body has become extremely viscous. The purple mansion has also expanded by 1 time, and the divine consciousness has become more and more condensed. Su Fan's eyes condensed, and his divine consciousness instantly spread to the surroundings, until it extended to hundreds of feet before stopping. At this time, his eyes condensed and he frowned. Su Fan felt that several powerful divine consciousnesses swept past his cave. He smiled bitterly. When he broke through just now, the movement was really a bit loud, and it was impossible to hide it from the foundation building monks of Shuaiman. It doesn't matter, just know it. If they are wary of him, then just leave here. Anyway, I have already built my foundation, so I can go anywhere. Thinking of this, Su Fan stood up from the ground and walked out of the cave. I saw Zuo Zonghao, the leader of Shu Ainman, and the other 3 foundation-building monks of the sect, all came to the outside of the cave. Zuo Zonghao bowed to him and said with a smile, "Congratulations, fellow Taoist." The other 3 also bowed to him and congratulated him with a very enthusiastic attitude. Su Fan couldn't help but smile bitterly. They had come to his door, what else could he say? He could only welcome them into his cave. I concealed my cultivation and built my foundation here. I hope the sect master will understand. After hearing Su Fan's words, Zuo Zonghao and others laughed. It is also a blessing for my Shuayan sect that fellow Taoist can build his foundation here. How can you forgive me? After he finished speaking, he stood up and bowed solemnly to Su Fan. Fellow Taoist has acted out of righteousness and destroyed the conspiracy of the evil cult. It is a great favor to my Shuayan sect Zuo. Thank you first. Zuo Zonghao was so humble, so Su Fan certainly couldn't be arrogant. And judging from the expressions of these people, not only did they not have the slightest sense of vigilance, but they also wanted to win him over. In this case, it might not be a bad idea to continue staying in Shuayan sect. Thinking of this, Su Fan quickly stood up and bowed to Zuo Zonghao. Master, you are too kind. I am also a member of Shuayan sect, so I cannot just sit back and watch. Su Fan's words actually showed his attitude, which also made Zuo Zonghao's face show a hint of surprise. Su Fan successfully broke through the foundation building stage, and what he was most worried about was that Su Fan would leave Shuayan sect. The communication between the 2 sides was very harmonious. In order to win over Su Fan, Zuo Zonghao gave Su Fan a mountain with rich spiritual energy in the mountain gate as a dojo. In addition, the sect would provide him with various cultivation resources every month. It can be said that the conditions were very generous. Su Fan was very satisfied with the conditions of Shuyan sect. A foundation building cultivator like him was really nothing in the Central Plains. Small sects also have their own advantages. At least they will get due attention. If they join those big sects, they will not take him seriously at all. After seeing Zuo Zonghao and others off, Su Fan returned to the practice room and sat cross-legged on the futon. He took off a beast bag from his waist, took out a demon beast egg from it, and looked at it carefully. Among the several beast eggs he seized from Zhou Tong, one of them showed some signs of hatching, so he kept it. Just now, he clearly felt a trace of life breath from this monster egg. It might be that when Su Fan broke through, the rich spiritual energy of heaven and earth gathered and activated this monster egg. Su Fan began to arrange the formation, put this beast egg in the middle of the formation, bit his finger and dripped a drop of blood on the beast egg. After some operations, Su Fan successfully signed a contract with the life in this beast egg. No matter what kind of creature it is, as long as it signs a covenant with him before hatching, it can be recognized as the master. After the master recognition ceremony, Su Fan placed this beast egg in the spiritual spring in the cave, patiently waiting for it to hatch. Looking at the beast egg soaked in the spiritual spring, Su Fan couldn't help but look forward to the monster that was about to hatch. The Zhou family is a big family in the Nine Nether Demon Palace, and the direct descendants of the family basically major in demons and demons. This monster egg is definitely not an ordinary thing. Chapter 273 Xiaoho Peak. Su Fan placed the monster eggs in the spiritual spring and left them alone. According to the Zhou family's books on demons and monsters and demons are completely different. The hatching process of demons is at least regular, but monsters are much more capricious. The entire hatching process can be said to be unreliable. Even if the eggs have shown signs of hatching, there is no regularity at all. It all depends on God's arrangement. It only takes a few days for the fastest, and it may take 1 or 2 years for the slowest. Anyway, Su Fan is not in a hurry, so let it go. The next day, several deacons and elders from the main hall of the Shuyan sect came early. Of course, they did not dare to neglect the newly added foundation building senior of the sect. They all respectfully waited outside Su Fan's cave. They did not greet Su Fan until he walked out of the cave. "Welcome, uncle." Seeing several people respectfully bowing to him, Su Fan was a little uncomfortable for a while. Su Fan waved his hand at them and said, "Everyone, get up." Hearing his words, several people stood up quickly and stood aside respectfully. The old man in the lead said with a smile, "Uncle Master, I am Guo Song, the deacon elder of the sect affairs hall. Xiaoho Peak has been cleaned up. I wonder if Uncle Master has any other instructions." Su Fan was stunned. He thought it would take at least a few days to move, but he didn't expect that his own temple would be cleaned up so quickly. "Thank you for your hard work. I will go over to take a look later. If there's anything I need, I will have to trouble you." After hearing Su Fan's words, Guo Song and others all breathed a sigh of relief. This newly promoted Uncle Master of Foundation Building is easy to talk to and not that difficult to serve. Su Fan waved his hand to send them away, then drove the magic weapon to the sect hall and greeted the sect master Zuo Zonghao. He had just broken through the foundation building and was going to retreat for 2 years to consolidate his cultivation. In fact, he just wanted to rest quietly for 2 years. Su Fan chatted with the sect master Zuo Zonghao for a while before going to Xiaoho Peak. There are hundreds of peaks and ridges in Shu Ainman, and there are only a dozen peaks with the most abundant spiritual energy, and each peak is dozens of miles away. Xiaoho Peak is located outside the mountain gate. Looking down from the air, the mountain is full of ancient trees, with branches as vigorous as dragons and snakes, tall trees, entangled vines, and large patches of fog lingering in it. There is a quiet and secluded valley among the lush trees on the top of the mountain. The small fenced courtyard inside is Su Fan's cave. Su Fan flew to a place not far from the cave and landed. The rich spiritual energy instantly hid him, making people feel relaxed and happy. Even in the entire Shu Ainman, this is one of the few places with the most abundant spiritual energy. Several deacons and elders of the Zhongwu Hall had been waiting for a long time. When they saw Su Fan coming, several people hurriedly came up to greet him, and then surrounded him and walked into the small courtyard in the valley. The small fenced courtyard is not big, covering only a few acres, and there are several simple and elegant thatched cottages in the courtyard. Su Fan followed Guo Song around the courtyard and was very satisfied with the environment here. Uncle Master, do you think there is anything you are not satisfied with? Su Fan smiled and waved his hand, saying, it's good here, let's leave it like this. Uncle Master, does the cave house need to send a few errand disciples over? I like to be quiet, so don't send errand disciples. What a joke, he has so many secrets, how could he let errand disciples go up the mountain? Okay, you guys go and get busy. Su Fan waved his hand to send Guo Song and others away, and then walked around the cave house. Around the fenced courtyard, there are shrubs and bushes everywhere. Everywhere you look is green, lush and swaying in the wind, which makes people feel relaxed and happy. Not far away, there is a gurgling spiritual spring. The water is sweet and clear, warm and transparent, and the grass on the bank is moist as if it is dyed with dew, and it is lush and green. The back mountain is a cliff, thousands of feet high. There is thick fog under the cliff all year round, and you can vaguely see a deep ravine under the cliff. Looking down from above, the ravine water is dark and bottomless. Except for some disciples of the sect living at the foot of the mountain, the entire Xiaoho Peak is Su Fan's dojo. Su Fan patrolled outside the courtyard, and then returned to the thatched cottage in the courtyard to start seclusion to consolidate his cultivation. In the next few months, Su Fan hardly left the house. He practiced hard in the cave every day, and his foundation building cultivation was completely consolidated. After breaking through the foundation building stage, Su Fan clearly felt that his own aura was completely different from that of the key training stage. Both the spiritual energy in the body and the soul have undergone earth-shaking changes compared to the past. In particular, the spiritual energy in the Danshan has become almost viscous. When he practices to the great perfection of the foundation building stage, the spiritual energy in the body will be completely liquefied. Now he casts spells, and his words follow his words, without any sense of restraint. The purple palace of the ancestral orifice between the eyebrows has also expanded a lot. When the divine consciousness is fully released, it can reach more than 100 feet away. When the divine consciousness is completely released, it can cover a radius of hundreds of feet. That night, Su Fan sat cross-legged on the futon and was practicing Hunungong. Perhaps because of his aptitude, his progress in cultivation has slowed down significantly since he entered the foundation building stage. Even if he takes elixirs every day, the progress of Hunungong is still almost zero. There is no way. Even for elite disciples with high talent, the progress of cultivation will become very slow after breaking through the foundation building stage. The time required for the accumulation of the initial stage of foundation building alone is longer than the entire key refining stage. This is how cultivation works. The higher the realm, the more difficult it is. Especially for cultivators with poor aptitude, the almost zero progress of cultivation makes people extremely desperate. Even if many cultivators break through the foundation building stage, they can only stay in the initial stage of foundation building in this life. Despite sleepless day and night cultivation, their cultivation still has no progress. Even if there is any small bottleneck, it can only be considered a common occurrence to be stuck for several years. After 9 turns of merit, Su Fan slowly opened his eyes. He opened the game panel, looked at his progress, and sighed. There was no other way, he could only endure day after day. At this time, the monster egg placed in the nearby pool suddenly moved. Su Fan quickly stood up from the ground, and with a flash of lightning under his feet, his figure appeared next to the spiritual spring. He looked at the monster egg in the spiritual spring and smiled. The dark beast egg had slightly left a crack, and the beast egg was about to hatch. Su Fan took out a jade slip from the ring and placed it on his forehead. This was a jade slip seized from Zhou Tong. It recorded the various experiences summed up by more than 10 generations of Zhou family cultivators who practiced a demon way, including the experience of hatching monsters. After a long time, Su Fan put away the jade slip, then sat cross-legged next to the spiritual spring and waited patiently. A few days later, Su Fan looked at the bald young bird in his hand and couldn't help but be speechless. What kind of monster is this? It's too ugly. Chapter 274 Ghost Crow. Although the monster was successfully hatched, Su Fan couldn't tell what it was. It was so ugly, bald, without even a hair. If it grows up, he would be too embarrassed to take it outside. He couldn't afford to lose face. But since it has been hatched, he couldn't just ignore it. The little guy didn't like to go back to the beast bag when he grew up a little. And he was very clingy, pestering Su Fan all day long. Anyway, there were not many people in the whole Sheoho Peak, so Su Fan simply let it go and let it wander around the cave. If the little guy was hungry, he would crush the soul-feeding pill and feed it. But this thing grew fast. It grew a whole circle in a few days, and it also grew thick gray fur. The little guy with hair is not so ugly. Despite this, Su Fan still couldn't tell what kind of monster it was. It was not until 2 months later that the little guy grew a body of black feathers, and Su Fan knew what he had hatched. This is a ghost crow, which is an extremely rare magical beast even in the entire 100,000-mile demon abyss. The ghost crow is very ferocious. Not only does it fly very fast, but it is also good at hiding. It has almost no natural enemies in the 100,000-mile demon abyss. The disadvantage is that its growth period is very long, which is as long as several decades. But once it is fully grown, its wingspan can reach an astonishing tens of meters. And the upper limit of its cultivation is extremely high. It is said that it can grow to a 4th-level magical beast, which is equivalent to the human race's nascent soul realm. Okay, just keep it alive and treat it as a pet. During the period of retreat and hard cultivation, Su Fan was not idle. Not only did he open up a vegetable garden around the cave, but he also issued tasks in the sect and got a lot of fruit trees from the secular kingdom. He also arranged a kitchen, a non-pit and a grill in the courtyard, and made various delicacies every day to satisfy his appetite. Su Fan finally lived a peaceful life again, and his days were leisurely. In the 2 years of retreat in the cave, he never stepped out of his cave. Everyone in Shuai's sect knew that there was a new uncle in the sect, but they had only heard about it, and few disciples had seen him. In the past 2 years, Zuo Zhonghao had not disturbed him. Except for Guo Song, the elder deacon of the sect's main hall, who came every 1 or 2 months to ask if the uncle needed anything, no one came to disturb him. In the early morning, the morning sun rose, and a soft and weak ray of early sun emerged, illuminating the whole world. A touch of gentle sunlight shone down, and the edge of the light spread from the earth, wrapping the distant foothills. The sunlight shone through the branches and scattered spots of light, and the crisp sound of birds lingered in the forest. Su Fan sat cross-legged on the futon, practicing Hunyun Gong. After 9 turns of gong, he slowly opened his eyes and exhaled a long breath of turbid air. At this time, a shrill cry came from outside the house, and a palm-sized black shadow flew in from outside. The ghost crow kept circling around Su Fan, and then saw its figure suddenly disappear in the air, and then suddenly appeared again. This is a magical power that the ghost crow had learned not long ago, and it showed off in front of Su Fan whenever it had nothing to do. After showing off its magical power, the little guy landed on Su Fan's shoulder, pecked his cheek gently with its mouth, and then called a few times. Su Fan was pestered and had no choice but to praise it, and the ghost crow flew away excitedly. This kind of scene happens several times a day. Having such a thing is really like raising a pet. Every day, it either flies around Sheoho Peak or stays with Su Fan. After 2 years of seclusion, it's time to come out. If it continues like this, it's a bit unreasonable. Su Fan left the cave and drove the magic weapon to the main peak of Shuaiman. He walked into the sect's main hall. The disciples on duty here didn't know him at all, but no one dared to stop him after seeing his cultivation. Sect leader Zuo Zhonghao saw Su Fan and hurried to meet him. "Junior brother, you are out of retreat." Su Fan nodded with a smile and said, "I've troubled the sect master during this period." Zuo Zhonghao welcomed him into the quiet room, brewed a pot of spiritual tea himself, and then poured him a cup. Su Fan took a sip of the teacup and asked, "Sect master, during the time I was in retreat, has the evil cult outside been causing trouble again?" Zuo Zhonghao smiled bitterly and shook his head. "Recently, the evil cult has become more and more violent. The 3 major sects in Qingyang mountain range have organized several encirclement and suppression, but the effect has always been unsatisfactory. A lot of small fish and shrimps have been killed, but the big fish have never been caught." Su Fan sighed secretly. The Luotian sect was indeed too cunning. They relied on the teachings and dreams to seduce monks to join the sect. Even in the West Wilderness, the brutal demon sect had no good way to deal with the evil cult. But the demon sect was ruthless. It would rather kill 1,000 by mistake than let one go. The vast western wilds was slaughtered by the demon sect, and the sect was slaughtered at will, which frightened the casual cultivators and made them dare not join the cult. But it was not the case in the Central Plains. The major immortal sects did not have the courage at all. The Shuayan sect did not suffer any losses. After hearing Su Fan's words, Zuo Zonghao sighed. The whereabouts of the cult are secretive. Now the sect has shrunk its defenses, abolished many nearby markets, and moved many cultivation families to the vicinity of the mountain gate. What's the use of this? It's just a stopgap measure, and it will also encourage the arrogance of the cult. If there's anything in the sect master can send it, and my junior brother has no choice but to do it. Since he enjoyed the generous treatment of the Shuayan sect, Su Fan had to express his attitude. Junior brother has just broken through the foundation building stage. Unless it is absolutely necessary, the sect will not send my junior brother. Su Fan chatted with the sect master for a whole morning, and then left. It must be said that the Shuayan sect was really good to him, and Zuo Zonghao was also very good at being a man, which made Su Fan very satisfied. He came out of the sect's main hall and came to the talisman hall, wanting to talk to Jie Yuntao again. Jie Yuntao was sitting in the room reading a book. When he saw Su Fan coming, he ran out in a few steps and bowed to Su Fan. "Welcome, uncle." Su Fan smiled bitterly and shook his head, walked over to help him up. "Old gent, we don't have to be like this." Although Su Fan said it casually, Jie Yuntao didn't dare to take it seriously. Even if Su Fan didn't care, if other disciples in the sect saw it, there would be discussions, so he became more respectful. Seeing old Ji's behavior, Su Fan sighed helplessly. Since he broke through the foundation building, he was afraid that he would not even have anyone to talk to in Shuayan sect. It's lonely at the top. Su Fan sat in the talisman hall for a while, and found that he could no longer find the original atmosphere, so he left. In the following days, Su Fan's life returned to peace. Except for showing up at the sect hall every few days, he hardly left his house and stayed in the cave to practice hard every day. Su Fan practiced and drew talismans every day, and occasionally made tools. His life was very dull. When he was free from practice, if he felt bored, he would tease the ghost crow or call out Sister Zhen to talk to her. Chapter 275 Jinden Sect. In the blink of an eye, several months have passed. Su Fan usually stays in the cave to practice hard, and shows up at the sect hall every 3 to 5 days. Since coming to this world of cultivation, it is only during this time in Shuayan that he has lived the most comfortably. Now Su Fan has another job, which is to preach in the Dharma Pavilion twice a month. He took the initiative to propose this job. After all, Shuayan treats him well, and all kinds of benefits are very generous. Although the sect leader Zuo Zonghao didn't say anything, he still has to find something to do. The preaching of the new foundation building uncle still attracted a large number of disciples to come and support him. Every time the square of the Dharma Pavilion was full of people. The content of Su Fan's preaching, in addition to his own experience in cultivation, is also the experience of fighting that he has summarized over the years. This year, I dare not say anything else, but in terms of fighting experience, Su Fan is still quite rich. After all, he was born in the West Wilderness Demon Sect, and he has experienced the Demon Abyss trial and the Zhou family's pursuit. I don't know how many life and death crises he has experienced. In particular, the experience of how to deal with evil cultivators and foreign evil demons is deeply welcomed by the disciples in the sect. After all, evil cultivators are rampant nowadays, and there is unrest everywhere. The disciples of the Xianzhuang lack these experiences, and many people have died at the hands of evil cultivators. Because Su Fan escaped from the disaster in Hao in Xiancheng, Shuayan knew it very well, so the disciples in the sect were very convinced by the experience he taught. Su Fan summarized several sets of fighting methods suitable for Fudeo cultivators based on the characteristics of Fudeo cultivators, and also let people fight on the spot and teach the disciples in the sect hand in hand. These fighting experiences are absolutely invaluable to these Xianzhuang disciples who lack practical experience. Su Fan is not private, and what he teaches is real skills. Now every time he goes to the Dharma Pavilion to preach, the disciples in the square are crowded, and later even Zuo Zonghao and several foundation building cultivators come to listen. Xianzhuang has been peaceful for too many years, and most of the disciples have not experienced the test of life and death, and they can't cultivate any fighting experience on the arena in the sect in any case. Since Su Fan preached, the fighting experience of Shuayan disciples has indeed improved a lot. Now the disciples in the sect just lack experience. If they can survive several life and death tests in the future, their combat effectiveness will become even stronger. Sect Master Zhuo Zonghao and several foundation-building monks in the sect are very satisfied with Su Fan's performance. So now Shuyan sect hardly arranges anything for him. Even several operations to encircle and suppress evil cults did not let Su Fan participate. Every time, he stayed in the sect and preached to the sect disciples with peace of mind. At noon that day, Su Fan had just finished lunch. He came to an open space outside the fence courtyard with a magic sword. Just as he was about to practice sword, he suddenly turned his head and looked in the direction of the back mountain of the sect. He saw that above a solitary peak deep in the mountain gate, a five-colored spiritual cloud of more than 10 feet in size suddenly condensed in the air. Someone is going to cross the tribulation. Su Fan personally passed by the Yuanying celestial phenomenon and recognized the tribulation cloud at a glance. The back mountain of the sect is where the late foundation-building monk of the sect has been in seclusion all year round. Since Su Fan entered the sect, he has not seen this foundation-building elder. This late foundation-building cultivator has been in seclusion for many years, and it seems that he is about to break through the golden core realm. Because of the disaster that happened in Hao-Idan sect, Su Fan became nervous. I hope this is a normal breakthrough, but don't make another breakthrough using evil methods. Thinking of this, Su Fan quickly put all the things in the cave into the ring, and forcibly put the ghost crow into the beast bag. If something goes wrong, he will run away immediately. As the calamity cloud continued to expand, the sky above the entire Shuyan gate was shrouded in thick dark clouds. The wind was howling, and lightning and thunder were roaring. The dark clouds that covered the sky and the sun kept rolling, and the blooming lightning illuminated the entire sky, and the light was dazzling. At this moment, the cultivators of Shuyan gate also realized that something was wrong, and they ran out of the cave and looked up at the terrifying calamity cloud. Boom! As a roar sounded, the entire Shuyan gate shook a few times, and the sect's mountain protection formation had been activated. Sect Master Zhuo Zonghao and several other foundation-building monks had already soared into the sky and were suspended in the air, looking nervously at the violently rolling tribulation clouds in the sky. Su Fan also flew over and was suspended beside Zhuo Zonghao. Sect Master, is the senior brother in the back mountain going to break through the golden elixir? Zhuo Zonghao's eyes were filled with excitement, and he nodded excitedly. Senior brother has been in seclusion for several years. I hope he can succeed. This world only cares about strength. Once a golden elixir monk is born in Shuyan sect, the sect's status in Qingyang Mountains will be completely changed. Even if there is only one golden elixir monk, Shuyan sect is also a golden elixir sect. Shuyan sect will also become the fourth largest sect in Qingyang Mountains and jointly control Qingyang Immortal City with the other three immortal sects. Ka. A thick thunder roared down, and the thunder tribulation finally began. At this moment, Su Fan was very nervous, fearing that the incident with Hao-Idan sect would happen again. As long as the situation was not right, he would instantly launch a blood escape and leave here. As the sixth heavenly tribulation descended from the sky, the dark clouds covering the sky of Shu Ainman gradually dissipated. This senior brother of Shu Ainman finally survived the thunder tribulation and became a giant and cultivator. Until this moment, Su Fan finally put his heart at ease. Fortunately, there was no trick this time, and the one in the back mountain was really going through the tribulation. Zhuo Zonghao also breathed a sigh of relief. Just now, he had been sweating for his senior brother in the back mountain, and his back was soaked with cold sweat. He let out a long breath, and his eyes revealed an excitement that was difficult to conceal. Let's go and pay homage to the uncle. After he said that, he drove the magic weapon and flew towards the isolated peak in the back mountain of the sect. Su Fan and others also hurriedly stepped on the magic weapon and followed him. When everyone came to the isolated peak, they all bowed and paid homage. Congratulations to the uncle for breaking through the giant. After a while, a voice came from a distance. It's Zonghao, right? You guys go back first. I just broke through, and I need some time to consolidate my cultivation. Yes, Zhuo Zonghao, Su Fan and others responded respectfully, and then left the isolated peak in the back mountain. Someone in the sect successfully broke through the giant realm, and the disciples celebrated. The atmosphere of the entire Shuyan sect became lively. Su Fan, Zhuo Zonghao and others returned to the sect hall, and they were so excited that they couldn't help themselves. They sat there and didn't say a word. Everyone knew that from today on, Shuyan sect would undergo earth-shaking changes. At this time, A sect disciple hurriedly ran into the sect hall. Sect master, there are several giant and cultivators outside the mountain gate. Zuo Zonghao laughed and said, my fellow disciples, let's go and welcome the seniors. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.